The land was an argument between rock and sky, and the rock was losing. This was the high red country of the Arizona Territory. Sometime around 1878, though the year mattered less than the heat. The sun did not rise here, it attacked. It had burned the mesas clean, leaving canyons that looked like wounds in the earth. These were the sacred places of the dying, the people. But the people were scattered, and the land itself held its breath. Further south, the town of Dry Mesa existed as a monument to stubbornness. It was a place that should not have been. The wind had sandblasted the optimism off every plank of wood. The main street was just cracked alkali flat, a pale scar between the saloon, the trading post, and the sheriff's office. For 2 years, the rains had forgotten this place. The drought was not a hardship. It was a tyrant. It governed every transaction, soured every mood, and drew deep lines in the faces of the people who waited. The air was thin and carried the metallic smell of dust. Into this brittle quiet rode Cole Whitaker. He was a man in his early 30s, maybe 34 or 35, but he wore the kind of stillness that made age hard to guess. He was not a large man, but he was built of dense materials. He sat his horse with an economy of motion, his eyes moving slow and deliberate. He owned a small herd of horses, tough mustangs he grazed up in the high meadows. But even the high meadows were turning brown. He had come to Dry Mesa for canvas and salt, but mostly for water. And he knew water would cost him. He hated this town. He hated the way it smelled of stale whiskey and desperation. He tied his horse to a rail that felt hot to the touch. The animal shifted, blowing dust from its nostrils. Cole slapped its neck gently. "Soon," he said. His voice was low, coated with the same dust that covered his boots. He saw the community huddled in the shade of the few overhangs. Mexican families, their dark eyes patient, waiting for supplies that were always late. A few Chinese laborers sat apart, their faces impassive, building a railroad they would never be allowed to ride. And the Anglos, the miners and the storekeeps, their tempers worn as thin as their boot soles. Cole Whitaker had seen the world organize itself into bullies and victims often enough. He had worn a blue uniform once, a cavalryman, proud of the horse and the saber. He left that life behind near the Washita, when a cruel order came down to clear a village that held only women and old men. He had refused. He had not fired his weapon. He had simply turned his horse and ridden away, the sound of the shots chasing him for 100 miles. That day, he had traded a uniform for a conscience, and it was a poor trade for staying warm, but a good one for sleeping. He walked toward the general store, his spurs making a lonely sound. That was when he saw her. She was standing outside the trading post, a roll of woven blankets under her arm. She was dying. He guessed she was 22, maybe 24 years old. She was not beautiful in the way the saloon girls were. Her beauty was in her structure, in the clean lines of her jaw and the straight, proud set of her back. She wore her hair tied back, and the sun caught the blue-black sheen of it. She was arguing with the trader, a fleshy man named Sipes. The price was agreed. She said, her voice was like Cole's, low and without tremor. "The price of wool is down. Tala," Sipes grumbled, not meeting her eyes. "Drought. Everything is down." "The quality of my weaving is not down," she said. Tala Nez knew the white man's world. She knew their language and their obsession with paper money. She moved between the canyons and the town, a guide for those few who were permitted, a weaver by trade. But her real knowledge was not for sale. She held the memory of the high places, the patterns of the stars, and the secret of the Suai Dai, the long spring. It was a line of hidden water, an underground river that fed the sacred valley where her ancestors were buried. It was the lifeblood of her people, and in a land dying of thirst, it was a secret more valuable than gold. Sipes tossed a few coins onto the counter. "Take it or leave it." Tala looked at the coins, then at the man. She did not move. She did not blink. She simply waited, her presence a heavy thing in the hot air. Cole watched, respecting the fight in her. the way she refused to be diminished. She had an autonomy he had seen in wild horses, a thing that could not be broken, only killed. "I will leave it," Tala said. She began to roll her blankets. Sipes turned red. He needed her work. The freighters paid well for true dine weaving. "Now, hold on." He was interrupted by the arrival of 3 men. They wore dusters despite the heat, and their guns were tied down. They were the Copper Vultures, a name they had earned for the way they stripped their victims clean. They worked for whatever power paid, and lately, the power in Dry Mesa had one name. The Vultures swaggered into the store, shoving aside a Mexican freighter. "Whiskey, Sipes," and put it on Blackwell's account. At the mention of the name, a new tension entered the room. Horace Blackwell. The name was iron and steel. He was a man building an empire of railroad tracks and water dams. A man who saw the empty land not as a home, but as a ledger. He was backed by money from the East and laws from Washington. He intended to dam the Sacred Valley, drowning the Dine graves, and lay tracks across the mouth of the canyon. He planned to sell the stolen water back to the towns he starved, speculating on the very land he ruined. He who controlled the Long Spring would control everything from here to the New Mexico line. And Horace Blackwell was not a man who worked alone. His partners were Sheriff Pike, a man who wore his badge as a shield for his own greed, and the Copper Vultures, who served as his brutal, private army. Talanez tried to leave the store as the Vultures entered. One of them, a thick-set man with a tobacco-stained beard, put a hand on her arm. "Where are you going? Sweetheart, show us what you got in that blanket." Cole had seen enough. He did not move fast. He just shifted his weight, placing himself between the man and the woman. He did not look at the Vulture. He looked at Tala. "Ma'am," he said, tipping his hat by a 1/4 inch. "Looks like you were leaving." The Vulture's hand tightened on Tala's arm. "This ain't your affair, Cowboy." Cole's voice went flat. "The man is talking to you," he said to Tala, ignoring the Vulture entirely. He was looking at her, and his eyes conveyed a message. "You have the dignity. I am just moving the obstacle." Tala understood. She pulled her arm free, a sharp, twisting motion. The Vulture, surprised by her strength and Cole's interference, stumbled back. He reached for his gun, but Cole's hand was already resting on the worn butt of his old cavalry revolver. He did not lift it. He just let it rest there. "I would not," Cole said. The words were quiet, but they cut through the heat. The Vulture stared at Cole. He saw the way Cole stood, balanced on the balls of his feet. He saw the absence of fear in his eyes. He saw a man who had faced worse things than a dusty saloon bully. The Vulture spat on the floor. "Whatever, she's just a squaw." He turned back to the bar. Cole held the door open. Talanez walked past him. She paused for a half-second, her dark eyes meeting his. She gave him a short, sharp nod. It was not gratitude. It was acknowledgement. He had seen her as a person, not a prize or a victim. He had respected her autonomy. She disappeared into the blinding sunlight. Cole let the door swing shut. He turned to Sipes. "A bag of salt, and I need to fill 2 barrels of water." Sipes looked nervous. "Water ain't free. Cole, Sheriff Pike's orders. Blackwell's men get priority. It's 5 cents a gallon." "I'll pay," Cole said, the disgust plain in his voice. He knew extortion when he saw it. Hours later, Tala rode her pony up the winding switchback, leaving the parched ugliness of Dry Mesa behind. The air grew cooler as she climbed, the red rock of the high plateau rising around her like the walls of a fortress. This was her home, the Dinetta. The wind smelled of pine and juniper here. She found her cousin, Kai Yazi, where she knew he would be on the high ridge overlooking the valley, concealed in a cluster of rocks. He was a man of perhaps 30 years, built with a warrior's lean grace. His face was sharp, intelligent, and marked by a profound, settled sorrow. Kai was a strategist. A quiet man who thought in long patterns. He had lost his mother and his younger sister during the long walk, the forced removal of his people years ago. He had survived, but he had never forgotten. His life was dedicated to one purpose, protecting what was left, the land and the law of his ancestors. He did not turn as she approached. "You were in the town," he said. It was not a question. "We need flour," she replied, sliding from her pony. "The town is a sickness," he motioned with his chin. Far below, in the valley that held the long spring, 2 white poles had been driven into the earth, fluttering with red cloth. They were here again. Tala's heart went cold. "Surveyors. They are mapping the bones of our grandmothers," Kai said, his voice hard. "They come with their sticks and their papers to steal the water." "Horace Blackwell," Tala said. "He has a map. I saw it in the saloon. It shows a line cutting through this valley." Kai Yazi looked at the sky, his face grim. He knew the white man's hunger. He knew it would not stop until it had consumed everything. He mistrusted their laws, their promises, and their steel. He was wary of any white man, especially those who rode armed, like the cowboy he had seen watching Tala in the town. He had been on a roof, observing, always observing. This cowboy was different from the vultures, quieter. But a wolf was still a wolf, even a quiet one. Back in Dry Mesa, Cole Whitaker paid the outrageous price for his water, loading the barrels onto his wagon. He saw Sheriff Pike emerge from the saloon, laughing with Horace Blackwell himself. Blackwell was a surprise. He was not a big man, but he radiated a chilling, dry energy, like a snake coiled on a hot rock. He wore a fine wool suit, impossible in the heat, and looked as if he had never sweated a day in his life. He was the architect of the region's misery, the man holding the mortgage on the whole territory. Pike clapped Blackwell on the back. "It's all set. Horace, the land is classified as uninhabited. The injunction is filed. We can start clearing the canyon by the end of the month." 30 days, Blackwell said, his voice thin. "See that it is done. Sheriff, I want those squatters. Dine or otherwise. Gone. My railroad does not wait for sentiment." Cole watched them. He saw the casual cruelty, the dismissal of lives for profit. It was the same arrogance he had seen in his commanding officer, the same cold math that weighed human souls against a strategic objective. He felt the old anger rise in him, thick and slow. The sun finally bled out behind the western mesas, abandoning the land to a sudden, biting cold. The stars emerged, not as soft lights, but as sharp, diamond chips in the blackness. Dry Mesa lit its yellow lamps, a small, fragile cluster of light against an immense, indifferent darkness. The town was a mix of cultures that did not mix well, a place of mutual suspicion, where the only common languages were thirst and debt. Cole made his camp outside of town, near his wagon and his precious water. He built a small fire, more for company than warmth. He thought of the dying woman's eyes, the way she had faced down Sipes, the way she had pulled her arm free. She had a name, Tala. He had heard Sipes say it. He saw in her a reflection of the land itself, beautiful, fierce, and holding secrets he could not understand. He felt an unwelcome pull, a stirring of connection he had long since learned to mistrust. Attachment, in this land, was just a prelude to loss. Miles away, in the high canyons, Tala sat with Kai. The air was sacred. The murmur of the hidden long spring was a vibration in the rock beneath them, a promise of life. "The cowboy in the store," Kai said, staring into his own small, smokeless fire. "He interfered." "He did," Tala said. "He is not one of them, but he is not one of us. He carries the mark of the cavalry." "He did not treat me like a squaw," Tala said simply. Kai nodded, accepting this, but his wariness did not ease. "It does not matter. They will all be swept away when Blackwell builds his dam. They want the water, and they will kill us all to get it." Tala looked at the stars. She knew her cousin was right. The white men saw the land as something to be broken, to be owned. They did not understand that the land owned them. The drought was cracking the earth open, and something terrible was about to be born from it. The air was already heating, promising a day of brutal stillness, when Cole Whitaker guided his wagon into the rutted track leaving Dry Mesa. His 2 barrels of water felt impossibly precious, worth more than the salt and canvas he had also purchased. He was not alone. 2 other wagons, one belonging to a rancher named Finney and another a freighter's wagon, had formed a small, desperate convoy. They were headed east, toward a public well rumored to still run clear. A full day's journey. Safety in this land was a matter of numbers, however small. Cole rode his horse alongside his wagon, his rifle resting in the crook of his arm. The land stretched out, a vast, sun-baked pan. By noon, the heat was a physical weight. The world shimmered. Finney's wagon, 50 yards ahead, seemed to float on a lake of rising air. They entered a shallow arroyo, the banks offering a brief, meager shade, and the world exploded. The first shot was a flat crack that seemed to come from the sky itself. Finney, the rancher, slumped over in his seat. His wagon stopped. Before Cole could even draw a breath, the high banks of the arroyo were alive with gunfire. "Copper vultures!" the freighter yelled, his voice cracking. He tried to turn his team, but a bullet found his lead mule, and the animal went down, screaming. Cole did not hesitate. His cavalry training took over, a cold calm settling over him. He fired 2 shots at the flashes of rifle fire on the ridge. Not to hit, but to suppress. Off the wagons into the rocks, he bellowed. He leaped from his horse, slapping its rump to send it to cover. He grabbed his rifle and ammo, diving behind his own wagon wheel. Bullets splintered the wood, thudding into the canvas and his precious water barrels. He heard the terrible sound of water gushing, a sound more painful than a man's cry. He saw the vultures now, at least 10 of them, moving down the banks, firing as they came. They were not just trying to rob. This was an execution. This was an extermination. The freighter, a man Cole had shared coffee with once, tried to run. He was cut down in 3 steps. Cole fired, his shot measured. One of the vultures grabbed his chest and fell. Cole worked the lever, chambering another round. He was pinned. They were methodical, closing in from both sides. This was not a fight he could win. It was a place he would die. A high, whistling call cut through the gunfire. It sounded like a hawk, but it came 3 times. On the ridge opposite the vultures, 2 figures appeared, silhouetted against the white-hot sky. It was Tala Nez and the man he had seen her with, Kai Yazi. They were on ponies, and they seemed to have appeared from the rock itself. Kai raised a rifle and fired. A vulture who had been flanking Cole fell backward. The attackers, surprised by fire from their rear, hesitated, turning their attention to the new threat. This way, Red Past Tala's voice was clear, carrying across the arroyo. She was pointing, not at him, but to a narrow split in the canyon wall he had mistaken for a shadow. The Red Pass come. Cole did not need to be told twice. He saw the man leading the vultures, a brute with a stained beard, shouting orders. Near him, Sheriff Pike, his badge glinting, was firing a pistol, his face a mask of rage. Pike scrambled for purchase on the loose rock, and a leather satchel, heavy and official, fell from his belt. He did not notice, too intent on the battle. Cole broke from cover. He ran, low and fast, scooping up the fallen satchel as he went. Bullets kicked up dust at his heels. He sprinted for the shadow Tala had pointed to. It was a crack in the rock, barely wide enough for a horse. He scrambled inside. The gunfire instantly became muffled, distant. He was in a narrow, twisting slot canyon, the walls a deep, cool red. The light was dim. He ran for 100 yards, his boots slipping on the smooth stone, before he saw Tala and Kai, their ponies tethered, waiting for him. Kai had his rifle trained on the entrance. His eyes were like chips of black ice. He looked at Cole, Then at the satchel in his hand, his expression unreadable, but filled with a dangerous, coiled energy. "They will not follow," Tala said. She was breathing hard, but her voice was steady. "This is Dineland. They fear it." "You saved my life," Cole said. He looked at Kai. "You both did." Kai said nothing. He just watched the entrance. Why, Cole asked. "They are the copper vultures," Tala said, as if that explained everything. "They are a disease. We fight it where we find it." She looked at the satchel. "What is that?" Cole opened the flap. Inside, there was not money, but papers. He pulled them out. The first was a letter, addressed to Sheriff Pike from Horace Blackwell. The other was a map. Cole unrolled it in the dim red light. It was a detailed survey of the entire region, but it showed something his own maps did not. It showed a long, winding blue line, marked with depths and flow rates, running directly through the sacred valley. It was the Suoi Dai, the long spring. Cole's breath caught. He had heard whispers of it, a legend of underground water, but here it was, mapped by white surveyors. And stamped across the valley, across the very heart of the blue line, were 3 words in stark black ink: Construction Zone A. "Tala," Cole said, his voice quiet. He handed her the map. She took it. Her face, so controlled, seemed to hollow out. She traced the blue line with her finger. Then the black letters. "They know," she whispered. "They have mapped its heart." Kai moved from the entrance, drawn by the change in her voice. He looked at the map over her shoulder. The silence in the canyon became absolute. Kai's hand tightened on his rifle until his knuckles were white. "Look at this," Cole said, picking up the letter. He read it aloud. It was cold. Legal language. It authorized Sheriff Pike to use any and all means necessary to clear Construction Zone A of trespassers and agitators to ensure the 30-day preliminary phase of the dam project could begin on schedule. 30 days, Tala repeated. The words hung in the air. They will drown the graves of our grandmothers. They will kill the spring. It's a land grab, Cole said, the pieces fitting together with a sickening click. Blackwell dams the valley, steals the water, then sells it back to the territory. The railroad gets its route, and he gets to be a king. Kai took the map from Tala. He folded it slowly, his movements precise. This is a declaration of war, he said. He looked at Cole, and for the first time, his suspicion was mixed with something else, a cold, pragmatic assessment. You were a soldier. I was, Cole said. You fight well. I fight when I have to. Cole thought of the burned wagons, the dead freighter, Pike and the vultures. They were not robbing, they were clearing. Finney's ranch borders that valley. They were sending a message. They will not stop with him, Kai said. They waited until the sun began to dip, filling the pass with deep purple shadows. They moved through the labyrinth of rock, emerging miles away from the ambush site, high on a mesa overlooking dry mesa. The town was a scatter of lights far below. Smoke rose from the center of it, thick and black against the twilight. What is that? Cole asked. They are finishing their work, Kai said. When they got closer, moving under the cover of darkness, they saw what was burning. It was the general store, Sipe's store. It had been torched, the flames lighting up the panicked faces of the townspeople. Sheriff Pike was there, his face streaked with soot, looking grim and official. It was agitators, he shouted to the crowd. The same ones who ambushed my patrol this morning, killed Finney and his man. They're trying to starve us out. He pointed. His finger was aimed at the high mesas, at the Dine lands. It's Kayazi. He's inciting a riot, trying to start an Indian war. There's a $500 reward for his capture, dead or alive. Cole felt a cold fury. Pike was not just a killer, he was a liar, twisting the massacre he had led into a political weapon. We cannot stay here, Kai said, his voice dangerously low. They will hunt us now. We have to use this, Cole said, touching the satchel. This map, this letter, it's proof. Proof. Kai's laugh was a bitter sound. Proof for whom? For the white men in the town they are sheep, and Pike is their dog. Not the town, Cole said. The federal government. Fort Sheffield. It's a territorial court. A federal marshal outranks a county sheriff. Kai studied him. You would go to your own people against your own people. Pike is not my people, Cole said. Neither is Blackwell. A new rumor was already snaking through the crowd. Cole saw one of Pike's deputies talking to a group of miners, his voice low and conspiratorial. The miners looked toward the hills, then back at Cole's wagon, which he had left near the edge of town. Saw him. I tell you, with that Dine witch. She's enchanted him, turned him against us. Tala heard it too. Her face hardened. It was an old, ugly tactic. Blemish the woman to discredit the man. This changes things, Cole said, his jaw tight. He knew he could not stay in Dry Mesa. He was an outcast now. That night, a figure found Cole at his camp. It was not Pike. It was Horace Blackwell. He came alone, unarmed, carrying a lantern, as if he were paying a social call. Mr. Whitaker, Blackwell said, his voice smooth and civilized. He gestured to the burned-out shell of the store. A terrible business. Cole just watched him. Sheriff Pike tells me you were in that unfortunate business this morning. He said you acted with commendable skill. It is a shame your water was lost. He told you that, did he? He did. He also tells me you are a former cavalryman. Blackwell set the lantern down. Its light cast long, flickering shadows. I find myself in need of a man with your particular talents. This region is becoming unstable. These Dine agitators, led by this man Kai, are threatening my railroad, my property. They are threatening progress. He smiled, a thin, dry expression. I need a foreman for my enforcement division, a man to oversee the copper vultures, to keep the peace, to ensure the work continues. It pays well, $200 a month, plus a bonus when the dam is complete. Cole looked at the man. He saw the face of the officer at the Washita, the same reasonable tone, the same polite mask over a core of absolute rot. He thought of Tala, and the map, and the 30-day deadline. He thought of the dead freighter. You want me to be your dog? Cole said. Blackwell's smile faltered. I am offering you a position of authority. Mr. Whitaker, choose your side, the future or the past. Cole stood up. He was taller than Blackwell. I've seen the future you're building. It stinks of smoke and blood. He gestured to the town. You burn a man's store, murder another, and then hang the blame on the very people you're trying to displace. I would be careful, Blackwell said, his voice losing its warmth, turning to iron. No, Cole said. You be careful. You have 30 days, but so do we. Blackwell's eyes narrowed. He did not know about the map, but he heard the threat. He picked up his lantern. You have made a grave mistake. Cowboy, you have sided with the dust, and the dust always loses. Blackwell turned and walked away, his shadow shrinking. A high, thin wind rose, carrying the red dust from the high mesas. It descended on Dry Mesa, coating everything in a fine, bloody powder. The air felt gritty, charged with malice. The land was thirsty, and it was angry. From a high vantage point, Kai watched the valley below, the sacred valley of the Long Spring. He had been watching for 2 days. He saw a sight that made his blood run cold. A herd of antelope, 100 strong, was running. They were streaming out of the valley, their movements frantic, desperate. They were fleeing the spring. They sensed the coming poison, the disturbance to the earth. Long before any man, it was the worst omen he had seen in his lifetime. He rode back to the hidden camp where Tala and Cole waited. He dismounted, his face grim. The animals are leaving the valley, he said. Tala closed her eyes. It was a sign of profound imbalance. Cole nodded, taking the news with his grim calm. Fort Sheffield. It's the only way. I will take this evidence to the federal court. I know a man there, an officer. He might listen. "We will take it," Tala said. Kai looked at Cole. His distrust was a living thing, a barrier between them, but he also saw the logic. "I will not go to the white man's fort. They hang men who look like me." "Then guide us," Cole said. "Get us past Pike's patrols. Get us to the edge of the flatlands. Fort Sheffield is my world. This," he gestured to the mesas, "is yours." Kai Yazi looked at this white man, this ex-soldier who had refused a bribe and declared war on a man like Blackwell. He did not trust him. He did not like him. But the antelope were running, and the map was in Cole's satchel. "I will guide you," Kai said. "I will keep you alive. But I do this for the spring, not for you." Cole nodded. "That is fair enough." The alliance was formed. A man who had lost his faith, a woman who protected her heritage, and a warrior who had lost his family. They had 30 days to stop a dam, save a valley, and prevent a war. 30 days before the ancestral graves were drowned in Blackwell's progress. Horace Blackwell's reach extended far beyond the range of a rifle. His true weapon was the ledger book. In the days following the ambush, a new, colder drought settled over Dry Mesa. Blackwell called in his debts. The town lived on credit for seed, for flour, for mining equipment, all advanced against future earnings, all held by Blackwell's territorial bank. Now, the notes were due. Men who had spoken idly of fairness, who had perhaps nodded a greeting to Cole Whitaker, found themselves facing foreclosure. The strategy was simple. He broke the herd by starving the weakest. But his master stroke was the water. He declared the community well, the last reliable source, to be on private property, his property. He posted guards, copper vultures, who now checked names against a list. Anyone whose payments were not current, anyone who had signed a petition against the railroad, anyone who was simply Dina, was turned away. The townspeople, trapped between thirst and financial ruin, turned on the only person they could, the man who had brought this trouble. Cole Whitaker. He was no longer just an outsider. He was a curse. Cole knew he had to leave, to get the satchel with its map and letter to Fort Sheffield. He, Tala, and Kai were camped in the high rocks, watching the town suffer. They were pariahs. "I need one more thing," Cole said, checking his revolver. "My horse, the good one. It is still at the livery, and we need provisions we cannot hunt. We cannot make a 100-mile ride on jerky alone." "It is a trap," Kai said simply. He was cleaning his rifle, his motions economical. "They are waiting for you." "They are waiting for me to be stupid," Cole said. "They are not waiting for me to be smart." He went in just before dawn, under the cover of a thick, rising wind. The air felt wrong, heavy and yellow. A storm was brewing. He slipped into the livery, bypassing the main street. He found his horse, a tough bay, and began to saddle him in the dark. "That's far enough, Whitaker," the voice came from the shadows. Sheriff Pike. He was not alone. 4 deputies, members of the Copper Vultures in all but name, stepped out, rifles leveled. "I figured you would come for your horse," Pike sneered. "A man loves his horse." Cole did not move. His hands were away from his gun. "It is a fine animal," Pike continued. Walking closer, he ran a hand along the bay's neck. "Looks an awful lot like the horse a man named Miller reported stolen 2 days ago." Cole's blood went cold. It was a frame-up. Horse theft, a hanging offense. It was cleaner than murder. And it had the veneer of law. "I bought this horse in Tucson. Pike, I have the bill of sale." "You can show it to the judge if you live long enough for a trial," Pike said. "Take him." Cole did not resist. To fight was to die, and he was worth more alive. They disarmed him, taking his revolver and rifle. They bound his wrists. "What about the satchel?" one of the deputies asked. "He does not have it," Pike said, his voice tight with frustration. He searched Cole himself, rough and angry. "It is with the woman, but that is all right. We will get her, and without him, She is just a squaw with a map. Take him to the cell." They marched him to the jail, a single, squat building of crumbling adobe and iron bars. They threw him inside. The cell was dark, smelling of stale sweat and despair. Pike locked the heavy iron door, his face split by a grin of pure malice. "You made the wrong choice. Cowboy," he said through the bars. "You should have taken Blackwell's money." Pike left, leaving a single deputy, a young, nervous man, to sit at the desk. Hours passed. The wind rose from a howl to a scream. The sky turned a sickly, bruised color. Sand began to penetrate the cracks in the office, coating the floor, the desk, the air itself. The deputy fought to close the shutters, cursing. The sandstorm hit. It did not arrive. It detonated. The world outside the small, barred window vanished into a churning wall of brown grit. It was day, but it was as dark as night. The building shuddered. The deputy lit a lantern, but the light was a feeble, yellow smudge in the choking dust. The front door of the jailhouse burst open. Tala Nez stood there, framed against the roaring chaos. She was wrapped in a blanket, her face covered. The deputy jumped up, grabbing his shotgun. "What in the hell? Get out! The jail is closed!" "I seek shelter," Tala shouted over the wind. "Please, just until the wind passes." The deputy hesitated. He was alone, and the storm was terrifying. "Fine in the corner, and do not move. You hear me." Tala nodded, moving to the corner farthest from the deputy, near the wood stove. She sank to the floor, pulling the blanket around her. She looked like a small, frightened animal. The deputy turned his attention back to the door, trying to brace it against the wind. Cole watched from his cell. He saw her, and he knew this was not chance. The deputy sat back down at his desk, his shotgun across his lap. He was edgy, peering into the brown fog that filled the room. The wind shrieked, a sound like 1,000 mourning women. A shutter on the far wall tore loose from its leather hinges and shattered against the desk. The deputy roared in surprise, jumping up as the storm poured into the room. Extinguishing the lantern, the room was plunged into absolute, roaring darkness. Damn it all," the deputy yelled, fumbling for a match. In that second of blackness and confusion, Cole heard a sound, not from the deputy, but at his cell door. A click, a scrape. A shadow moved within the shadow. Tala, she was not in the corner. The deputy finally struck a match. The flame flared. He saw Tala standing at the open cell door. He saw Cole Whitaker stepping out. The deputy's mouth opened. He raised the shotgun. Cole moved. He did not have a weapon, but he had his cavalry training. He crossed the room in 2 strides, grabbing the barrel of the shotgun and twisting it upward. The gun discharged, blowing a hole in the roof. Cole drove his shoulder into the deputy's chest, slamming him against the wall. The man's head hit the adobe with a sick thud, and he slid to the floor, unconscious. "Kai is waiting, with the horses, and this," Tala said. She pressed Cole's gun belt into his hand. She had taken it from the wall. Cole strapped it on. Pike's office, the satchel. "It is not here," she said. "He must have it." "Then we go without it," Cole said. "The map, the proof, gone." His heart sank. "No," Tala said. She reached under her blanket. She pulled out the leather satchel. "Kai took it from Pike's saddlebag an hour ago. He left the trap for you. I came to be the key." Cole stared at her, at the intelligence, the sheer, cold bravery. He nodded. "Let's go." They burst out of the jail into the apocalypse. The sandstorm was a living thing, a solid, screaming wall of grit that tore the breath from their lungs. They could not see 5 feet. The sand stung like needles, blinding them. Tala grabbed Cole's hand. Her grip was like steel. "This way, trust me." She led him not through the street, but between the buildings, her feet knowing the ground she could not see. The wind tried to peel them apart. Cole bowed his head, Following her pull, he heard shouts behind them, muffled by the storm. Pike, he had heard the shotgun blast. Rifles fired. The bullets were instantly swallowed by the wind, gone nowhere. They found Kai. He was in the lee of the livery, 3 horses huddled together, their backs to the storm. He had Cole's bay. "You are loud," Kai said, his voice calm even in the gale. "We are leaving," Cole yelled back. They mounted. Pike and 2 vultures appeared from the swirling dust, ghosts in the brown light. They raised their rifles. Kai wheeled his pony. "Go ride west," he commanded Cole and Tala. "What about you? I will show them how a dying man hides." Kai spurred his horse directly toward Pike, firing his rifle. Pike and his men dove for cover. Kai vanished into the storm. "He is going to draw them off," Tala cried. "And we are going to let him," Cole said, grabbing her reins. That was the plan. Ride. They rode into the teeth of the wind, the storm erasing their tracks the moment they were made. They rode until the horses were staggering and the storm had screamed itself into a hoarse whisper. They were lost, Cole knew, utterly lost. But Tala was not. She led him through the maze of canyons as the air cleared, the world remade in a fresh coat of red dust. She brought them to a place hidden beneath a massive overhang of rock, a cleft in the mesa wall, Shadow Cave. Inside, it was still and quiet, protected from the wind. It was a sanctuary. As their eyes adjusted to the dimness, they saw the walls. They were covered in paintings, ancient and powerful, drawn in colored sand, animals and men and spirits, and dominant. Covering an entire wall was a long, winding shape, a serpent made of blue and white sand. "The Long Dragon," Tala whispered, her voice filled with reverence. "It is the story of the Long Spring. This is where our elders came to shelter. This is a place of memory." Kai found them there an hour later. He walked in, his face caked in dust, and nodded. "They are lost. They hunt shadows." They built a small, smokeless fire of dry juniper. The 3 of them sat, the tension of the escape draining away, leaving them hollowed out and weary. Kai looked at Cole, his eyes measuring the white man in the firelight. "You fight like a man protecting his home." He gestured at the cavalry brand on Cole's saddle, which he had brought. "But this is the mark of our enemy." Cole looked at the brand. He touched it, a faint scar. It was a long time ago. He looked at Kai, and then at Tala. He knew he owed them the truth. "I was a lieutenant," Cole said, his voice low, the words tasting like ash. "We were in Colorado territory. It was winter. The snow was deep. We found a village, Cheyenne. Our orders were to clear it, to relocate them to the reservation." He paused, the memory sharp. "We rode in. There were no warriors, just old men, and women, and children. Our commander gave the order to fire, to force them out into the blizzard." His hand tightened into a fist. A blizzard. It was not a relocation. It was a death sentence. I refused the order. I told my men to stand down. My commander called it mutiny. He drew his pistol on me. Cole looked at his hands. I hit him. I broke his jaw. Then I rode out. They shot at me. I kept riding. I never went back. He looked at Kai. "I am a deserter. I ran when I saw what my tribe, what my people were." The cave was silent. Tala watched Kai. The warrior's face was a mask, but his eyes were filled with a terrible, ancient pain. "My sister," Kai said, his voice so quiet they had to lean in. "She was 7 years old. When they moved us, the long walk, it was winter. She did not have shoes that fit. The snow was deep." He looked at the fire. "She did not finish the walk. They call it safety. They call it progress. You call it orders. I call it murder." He raised his eyes to Cole. The suspicion was gone, replaced by a hard, shared understanding. 2 men, sculpted by the same fire, the same betrayal by authority. "You are not a soldier," Kai said, his voice firm. "You are a man. You left your people when they were wrong. That is a hard thing, a strong thing." He held out his hand. "You are a guest of my family. Cole Whitaker. This place is your shelter." Cole took his hand. It was the first time they had touched as equals. Tala felt a knot inside her chest ease. She saw them, the cowboy and the warrior, and she saw the bridge of their shared grief. She stood. "If we are to do this, we must do it as one." She led them to the back of the cave, to a flat stone altar, worn smooth by generations of hands. "This is a place of vows. We swear on the memory of those who came before." She placed her hand on the cold stone. "We protect the water." Kai placed his hand over hers. "We protect the people." Cole looked at their hands, brown and white together on the ancient stone. He put his own hand on top. It was warm. "And we do not kill a surrendered man," he said, adding his own hard-won creed. Kai and Tala both looked at him. Kai nodded once. "We are not butchers. We are not Blackwell. The vow is made." They sat again. The path was clear. "Pike is hunting 3 people." Cole said, "He is hunting for the satchel. He knows we are together." "He will expect us to ride for the fort," Kai said. "He will set roadblocks on the flatlands." "Then we must break his expectations," Cole said, looking at Kai. "We split. You are the man he wants. The bounty is on your head. You lead them south. Draw the vultures. Draw Pike. Be the shadow they are hunting." "And you?" Kai asked. "Tala and I," Cole said. "We will go to Fort Sheffield. We will take the low route, the one only she knows. We will take the evidence to the federal court. You buy us the time." Kai looked at Tala. He was asking her to trust this man with her life. She nodded. "It is a good plan," Kai said. He stood. "I will give you 2 days. Ride hard. I will make enough noise for an army." He left the cave, a shadow disappearing into the pale morning light. Far away, in dry mesa, the town was digging itself out. Sheriff Pike's office was ruined. He was in a rage, his authority shattered, his prisoner gone. He knew what Blackwell would do to him. He was a desperate man. He walked into the saloon, which had survived the storm. He walked to a table in the back. A man sat there, alone, nursing a cup of coffee. He was Mexican, his face lean and weathered, his clothes worn but clean. He was meticulously cleaning a long-range Sharps rifle. "Valdez," Pike said, his voice raspy. The man, Valdez, did not look up. He continued wiping the barrel of his rifle. "I have a job, the $500 bounty on Kai Yazzie. I am matching it. Another $500. $1,000. For his head." Valdez paused his work. He looked up. His eyes were the color of lead, flat and patient. 1,000. He is a ghost. He is hard to hunt." "He is the key," Pike snarled. "He is with the woman and the cowboy. But he is the one I want. He is their spirit. Kill him, and the other 2 will break. Kill Kai Yazzie. I do not care how." Valdez considered this. He was not a vulture. He was not a bully. He was a professional. He was a hunter. He slid a cloth patch down the barrel. His movements precise. $1,000, Valdez said. "I will find him." He pushed the empty coffee cup away. "I will bring you his braid." They rode north, away from the sun, keeping to the broken lands. Kai was a ghost somewhere to the south, a ghost they were trusting with their lives. Cole had the satchel, its leather strap cutting across his chest, the weight of their only hope heavy against his ribs. Tala rode beside him, her face set, her eyes constantly scanning the ridges. This was the Mesa Maze. It was a place the railroad surveyors had avoided. A geography of chaos. The canyons did not run straight. They twisted, folded back on themselves, and ended in sheer 1,000-foot drops. It was a land designed to kill the careless. They rode in silence for the first few hours. The only sound, the click of shod hooves on slick rock. The silence was not empty. It was filled with the things they were not saying, the man who was hunting them, and the man who was being hunted. "Kai will be careful," Cole said finally, breaking the quiet. He was speaking as much to himself as to her. "Kai is not built for carefulness," Tala replied, her voice flat. "He is built for purpose. He will draw them. He will bleed them, but he will not be taken." She said it like a prayer, or a fact. Cole looked at her. He saw the strength in her, but he also saw the fine tremor in her hands, the way she held the reins. "You are afraid for him." "He is my cousin," she said. "He is the last of my father's line. Fear is a luxury. I am responsible for his choice." "That was his choice, Tala, not yours. He is a warrior. He is a warrior because his other choices were taken from him," she said. She looked at him, her dark eyes sharp. "You were a soldier. You know." He did. He knew the feeling of being honed into a weapon. All other parts of you filed away. They pressed on, Tala leading them through passes so narrow their knees brushed the rock walls. They avoided the wide valleys, where Blackwell's railroad patrols, gangs of copper vultures with official badges, might see them. Twice, they heard the distant, lonely whistle of a steam engine, a sound that felt like a violation in the ancient silence. "What will you do?" Cole asked, as they rested the horses in a shallow cave. "If this works, if the fort listens, and Blackwell is stopped." Tala was grinding dried juniper berries with a stone. She did not look up. "The if is very large." "Just suppose." She thought for a long moment. "I will build a house. Not a hogan, but a house of stone, near the spring, and I will teach." "Teach what?" "The Dine children. They must learn to read the white man's paper. They must know the words on the treaties that lie. If they cannot read the paper, they will always be cheated." She added dried herbs to the mix. "And I will teach the white children. I will teach them how to listen to the land, so they do not kill it with their greed. I will teach them the herbs, yarrow for fever, snakeweed for a cough. I will build a school for both." Cole watched her. She was not describing a dream. She was describing a plan, as detailed and solid as the map in his satchel. She was a creator, a weaver, a healer. He had spent his life running, or fighting. He did not know how to build. That night, the temperature plummeted. The high desert air had no mercy. It gave up its heat the moment the sun was gone. They made a cold camp in a deep, narrow-bottomed canyon, terrified a fire would be seen. The rock walls rose 500 feet on either side, a thin ribbon of stars visible above. It was a place that felt like a trap. Cole was checking the horses, his hands stiff with cold. He felt a change in the air, a smell. Not juniper, not dust. It was the smell of wet stone, of ozone. "Tala," he said, his voice urgent. A low rumble, not thunder, vibrated through the ground. It was the sound of 1,000,000 tons of water, a world of water, moving very fast. "Flash flood," she whispered, her eyes wide with terror. A storm, miles away on the high mesas, was draining into this canyon. The rumble became a roar. It was not approaching. It was here. A wall of black water, churning with debris and entire trees, turned the corner of the canyon, 100 yards away. "Climb!" Cole yelled. He grabbed her arm, pulling her toward the canyon wall. It was sheer, but there were cracks. He threw her upward. "Climb!" He shoved her, forcing her to find a handhold. She scrambled up. He climbed below her. The water hit the canyon floor, not as a flood, but as a battering ram. The sound was deafening. The water rose instantly, a cold, dark, violent thing. It tore at Cole's boots, pulling him. "Keep going," he shouted. Tala was 10 feet up, but she was on a small ledge. It ended. There was nothing but smooth, vertical rock above her. The water was rising, lapping at Cole's knees. He could feel the suction, the power of it. "Cole," she screamed. The water was at his waist, dragging him from the wall. He uncoiled the rope from his shoulder. He had one chance. He formed a loop, and in the dark, churning chaos, he threw it. He was aiming for a horn of rock he had seen above her, a dark shape against the paler stone. The rope caught. He pulled it taut. "Climb the rope." "Tala now." "I cannot. It is too high. I will slip." "You will climb," he roared, his voice raw with the command. He braced himself against the wall, the water now at his chest, the current pulling him, trying to spin him. He was the anchor. If he let go, she would be trapped, and he would be drowned. She grabbed the rope. She was light. She began to pull herself up, hand over hand, her feet scraping for purchase. Cole's arms screamed. The water was icy, numbing him. He was losing his footing. Faster. She was almost at the horn of rock. He felt his boots lift from the ledge. He was floating, held only by the rope and his grip on the canyon wall. The pressure was immense. Tala scrambled onto the higher ledge. She was safe. "Cole!" she screamed, looking down. He looked up. He saw her face, a pale oval in the dark. He let the current take him. The rope, now slack, was ripped from his hand. He was swept away, tumbling in the black. Debris filled water, a rag doll in the fist of the mountain. He fought for air, but there was only grit and chaos. He was slammed against a rock. The impact drove the breath from him. He felt his revolver torn from its holster. The satchel was ripped from his chest. The map, the proof, it was gone. He was drowning. He felt a strange, cold peace. It was the end. He had failed. Then something grabbed his shirt. It was not a hand. It was a tree branch, lodged between two boulders, creating a tangle just below the surface. He clung to it, his lungs burning. He pulled his head above the raging water. He coughed, vomiting mud and water. He was alive. He held on, the flood trying to tear him loose, for what felt like an eternity. The roar lessened. The water, as quickly as it had come, began to recede. It dropped from his chest to his waist, then his knees. Within 30 minutes, it was a fast-moving, shallow river. He was 20 yards down canyon from where he had lost his grip. He was bruised, half-frozen, and defeated. He sat on the muddy bank, his head in his hands. "Cole." Her voice was a whisper from above. He looked up. Tala was climbing down the rock face, moving with a desperate, animal grace. She reached him, her hands touching his face, his arms, his chest, as if to prove he was real. "You are alive," she said. "I am," he said, his voice a rasp. "But the satchel, Tala, it is gone. The map, the letter, everything, it is gone." She did not say anything. She simply knelt beside him in the mud, and her shoulders began to shake. She did not weep, but a dry, terrible sound came from her. He put his arm around her. It was an awkward, clumsy gesture. He was not a man built for comfort. He was stiff, cold, and he feared this. He feared the feeling of her small, shaking body against his. He had learned, the hard way, that every time he held something, the world ripped it away. He had lost his rank, his country, and now he had lost the one chance to save hers. She leaned into him. She was not afraid of him, or of his touch. She was afraid of the world they lived in, a world that took everything. He felt a wall inside him crack, a wall he had kept mortared for 10 years. He held her, and in the cold, muddy darkness, they were just two people, their shared failure a more intimate bond than any victory. They found their horses at dawn, a mile down canyon, huddled on a high patch of sand, terrified but alive. Cole's saddle was gone. They had one horse, Tala's pony, and no supplies, no weapons, and no proof. "We go on," she said. "Tala, it is over. We have nothing." "We have the truth," she said, her voice fierce. "We will go to the fort. I will speak. I am the proof." He looked at her, at the raw determination in her face. He nodded. He would follow her. He would follow her to the gates of hell. They rode double on the small pony, a slow, miserable pace. They were headed for Coyote Wells, a trading post that was the last water stop before the long, dry stretch to Fort Sheffield. Coyote Wells was a single building in a sea of alkali flat. As they approached, Cole's hand instinctively went for the gun that was no longer there. 3 men were on the porch, copper vultures. They had Blackwell's money in their pockets, and his arrogance in their eyes. "Well, looky here," one of them said, standing up. He was the same man who had put his hand on Tala in the store. "If it ain't the cowboy, plain night." "And he brought his squaw with him," another laughed. "You look half drowned, both of you." Cole slid off the horse, putting himself between them and Tala. "We need water. We will pay." "Water is for Blackwell's men," the first vulture said, his hand on his gun. "And you ain't Blackwell's man. Whitaker, you are a traitor. And she," he spat, "is a wanted fugitive." Cole measured the distance. He had no weapon. He could take the first man, but the other 2 would kill him. Tala slid from the pony. She was holding her last blanket, the one she had used to cover herself in the jail. It was a magnificent piece, woven in reds and blacks, still damp, but the pattern was complex and beautiful. "I am a weaver," she said, her voice surprisingly steady. She ignored the other men and spoke to the leader. "I have this blanket. It is worth $50. I will trade it for 2 canteens of water and safe passage." The vulture looked at the blanket. He knew its value. $50, he laughed. "It is wet. It is ruined." "It is not ruined. It is wool. It will dry." While she spoke, Cole began to sway. He leaned heavily against the porch rail, his eyes rolling. "Whiskey." He groaned. "Just a bottle of whiskey. I need it. I need it bad." The vultures looked at him. He was a pathetic sight, bruised, muddy, and shaking. "Shut up, drunk!" the leader snapped. "He is sick," Tala said. "He is a merchant. He fell in the river. We lost everything." "A merchant." The vulture looked at Cole's calloused hands. His hard face. "He does not look like a merchant." "I'm a cattle buyer," Cole slurred, fumbling in his empty pockets. "Lost my money, lost my horse. The woman, she is just a weaver I hired as a guide. Give me a bottle. I will pay you at the fort. I know people at the fort." The vultures were confused. This trembling, desperate drunk was not the cold-eyed man from the arroyo. The fight was gone out of him. "To hell with this," the leader said. He was bored. He snatched the blanket from Tala. "Here." He tossed a single, half-full canteen at her feet. "Now get out of here. And if we see you again, we will kill you." Tala grabbed the canteen. Cole stumbled toward the pony, and she helped him up. He slumped over the pony's neck, groaning. She climbed up behind him and kicked the pony, riding out of Coyote Wells as fast as the tired animal could go. They did not speak until they were a mile away. Cole sat up straight. "You are a good actor," she said, a small flicker of a smile on her lips. "I have been in many saloons," he said. "I have seen many pathetic men." He looked back. "But we have a problem. They will send a rider to the next post. They know we are headed for the fort." Just then, a rider approached from the south. He was a Mexican freighter, his wagon loaded with hides. He slowed as he saw them. "Señorita, are you all right?" he asked, his eyes kind. "We are," Tala said. "There is trouble to the south," the freighter said, crossing himself. "Blackwell's men, they are like hornets. They hunt a dying warrior. I heard gunfire, half a day ago, in the yucca forest." Tala's heart stopped. "Did you see him? The warrior?" "No, señorita, but I found this." He held up a long, dark braid of hair, tied with a leather thong. "It was on the ground, near a lot of blood." They did not catch him. "The man they call Valdez, the hunter. He lost him. The warrior vanished, but he is wounded, badly wounded." I think. Tala took the braid. It was Kai's. She closed her hand around it, the knuckles white. He was alive, wounded, hunted, but alive. Thank you, she said to the freighter. The man nodded, his face full of pity. Vaya con Dios. He rode on. Tala held the braid. The news of Kai's survival, even wounded, was a steel rod in her spine. They were all still fighting. They reviewed their situation. They had 1 canteen of water, a tired pony, and no proof. The legal case was dead. He will have copies, Cole said, thinking aloud. Who? Blackwell. Pike. The letters you saw in the satchel. They were receipts. Invoices for bribery. A good businessman keeps copies of his expenses. But they are in Dry Mesa, in Blackwell's office. Yes, Cole said, but it is all we have left. We cannot go to the fort with nothing but a story. We have to go back. It was insane, but it was the only way. That night, they camped on a high mesa, the wind cold and clean. They had a long ride back, and they were weak. Tala shared the last of their water with Cole. He looked at the sky. I am not good at this, he said. At what riding? At this relying on someone, trusting. The last time I trusted someone, my commanding officer. He ordered a massacre. The last time I cared about a place, my ranch. The drought took it. Everything I touch, I lose. I am afraid of it. Tala, I am afraid of this, of you. She looked at him, her gaze direct. I am afraid too. My mother used to say that to love a dying man was to invite sorrow, because the soldiers would one day take him. I think to love any man is to invite sorrow, to be owned, to be possessed. That is my fear. I will not be a man's property. Cole, not for love, not for safety. I am not trying to own you, he said, his voice rough. I know, she said. They sat in silence. The land around them was vast and empty, but the small space between them was charged. Tala stood up and walked to the edge of the mesa. The rock was warm from the last of the sun. Come here. He walked over, standing beside her. Put your hand on the stone, she said. He did. Close your eyes. Do not listen with your ears. Listen with your hand. Listen with your skin. What do you feel? He felt foolish, but he did it. He felt the wind. He felt the rough grain of the sandstone. And beneath that, he felt something else. A faint, deep vibration. A hum. It was so quiet it was almost not there. I feel... He searched for the word. A pulse. A thrum. It is the water, she whispered. The long spring. It is 50 miles away. But it is deep. It runs under all this land. It is the blood of the earth. My grandmothers taught us how to hear it. This is how we find the springs. This is how we know where life is. He opened his eyes. He looked at her, at the way the moonlight caught the line of her jaw. She was not just a woman. She was a part of this land, a part of its secrets. This is what we are fighting for, she said. Not just the water, but the knowledge of it. She touched his chest. We will get the proof, and we will go to the fort. She paused, and a rare, shy smile touched her lips. If we survive this, Cole Whitaker, you must learn my true name, my dying name. Your name is Tala. That is what the white men call me. My name is Tala Ili. It means, she who weaves the water. You must learn to say it, to call my spirit correctly. He looked at her, his heart aching with a feeling he had refused to name. He touched her face, his rough fingers tracing the line of her cheek. TJ, TL, I cannot say it. Tlaili, she repeated, her voice soft. He tried. Tlahili. She smiled. You will learn when we are free. He leaned in. He was not going to kiss her. He was not going to take. He was just going to be near this impossible strength. But she met him halfway, and her lips touched his. It was not a kiss of passion. It was a kiss of salt and dust and shared fear. It was a promise made on the edge of the world. It was a life-or-death pact. He pulled back. Tlaili, he whispered, the name a broken prayer. We will go back, and we will not fail this time. The journey back to Dry Mesa was a descent into hell. They rode the single pony until it nearly foundered. Then they walked, driven by a cold, shared desperation. They slipped into the town under the cover of a moonless night, ghosts moving through the streets that wanted them dead. Cole, with his soldier's knowledge of silence, and Tala, with her native knowledge of shadows, were a potent combination. They did not go near the jail. They went to the new railroad office, where Blackwell kept his ledgers. Cole used a pry bar from the livery to open a rear window. He left Tala outside, a sentinel in the dark. He was inside for 10 minutes, a lifetime. His only light a single stolen match. He found the books. He found the duplicate copies of the receipts. He found a letter from Pike, complaining about the cost of the copper vultures and demanding a bonus. It was everything they needed. He took the entire ledger, a heavy, leather-bound book. They were gone before the town stirred, riding east, this time for good. They rode for 2 days, pushing the pony, and themselves, to the edge of collapse. They did not speak of what they had done or what they were about to do. They ate the last of their dried jerky. They shared the water. The kiss on the mesa was a memory, a spark of heat in a world of cold purpose. Fort Sheffield was a shock. It was a rectangle of order in a world of chaos, a high stockade, a parade ground of raked earth, and the American flag, snapping clean and bright against the blue sky. It was a place of bugle calls, shouted commands, and blue uniforms. It was the world Cole had abandoned. They rode through the main gate. The guards, seeing a battered cowboy and a dying woman on a near-dead pony, sharing a saddle, moved to stop them. "We are here to see Major Collins," Cole said, his voice a dry rasp. He slid from the horse, his legs nearly buckled. "Tell him Cole Whitaker is here." The name meant nothing to the guards, but the authority in his voice did. One of them went to find an adjutant. They waited on the parade ground, a spectacle of dust and exhaustion. Soldiers stared at them, at Tala, her beauty hidden under layers of grit and weariness. "Mr. Whitaker." The voice was deep, laced with gravel and surprise. Major Collins was an older man, in his late 50s, with a gray mustache and eyes that had seen too much. He was a man defined by the regulations he held dear, but his eyes held a core of decency. He saw Cole, and his face was a mix of confusion and something like pity. He saw the ledger Cole held. "It has been a long time, Cole," he said, his voice low. "A very long time. I heard you were dead." "Close, Major, but not yet. I need to talk to you, not as a deserter. As a man, I am calling in the favor." Collins's face hardened. He looked around. "My office." The favor was a night near the Brazos River, 8 years ago, when Cole, then a young lieutenant, had pulled a dismounted Collins, his leg broken, onto his own horse while under Comanche fire. He had saved the major's life. In the office, with the door closed, Cole laid the ledger on the desk. He told the story. He did not embellish. He spoke of Blackwell, of Pike, of the vultures, of the stolen map, and of the long spring. Tala stood beside him, silent, her presence a testament to his words. Collins listened. He did not interrupt. He looked at Cole, then at Tala. He opened the ledger. He was not a banker, but he understood receipts. He saw the payments to Sheriff Pike. He saw the entries for security that matched the dates of the ambush and the burning of the store. He saw the cold, clear evidence of a conspiracy. "Blackwell," Collins said, the name tasting like poison. "He is a powerful man. He has friends in Washington. He is building a railroad. He calls it progress." "He calls it progress," Cole said. "But he is murdering citizens and stealing land to do it. He is trying to steal the water from her people. And you, Cole, you deserted your post. You are a wanted man." "I am," Cole said, "but I am not a liar, and I am not a murderer. You know that." Collins looked at the papers. His face a map of conflict. He owed this man his life. He also owed his career to the army. Before he could speak, there was a knock. His adjutant opened the door. "Major, sirs, Mr. Harris from the Trans-Western Railroad is here. He heard there was a legal matter concerning the dam." A man in a clean, expensive suit stepped in, smiling. He was young, his face smooth, his eyes quick. "Major Collins, a pleasure. I am the legal counsel for the railroad. I heard there was some confusion about our operations at Dry Mesa, some squatters causing trouble. I understand." Collins looked at Cole. The trap. Blackwell's reach extended even here. "Mr. Harris," Collins said, his voice like iron, "I have evidence here of murder, bribery, and conspiracy to defraud the United States government, all tied to your Mr. Blackwell." Harris's smile did not waver. "Evidence or accusations, Major? Surely you are not entertaining the testimony of a known deserter." He gestured to Cole. "And this woman, what evidence could they possibly have that was not obtained illegally stolen?" "No doubt." He saw the ledger. "Ah, company property. Inadmissible. I am afraid. Anything stolen cannot be presented. Fruit of the poison tree. Major, you see my dilemma." "I see your game, sir," Collins said, his anger rising. "This is a military territory." "But it is a civil matter. Major, property rights, water rights. I am afraid you have no jurisdiction. I must insist you return that ledger and release these two individuals into the custody of Sheriff Pike, who, I might add, is the lawful authority in that district." Cole felt the cold dread of failure. The lawyer was a snake, and he was tying them in legal knots. They had 20, maybe 25 days left. A legal delay was a victory for Blackwell. "He is wrong," a voice said. Everyone turned. Tala was speaking. She stepped forward. She was not looking at the lawyer. She was looking at Major Collins. "This is not a civil matter," she said, her English clear and precise. "It is a matter of life and of treaties." "Ma'am, I must—" the lawyer began. "I speak," Tala said, and there was such authority in her voice that the lawyer fell silent. "Major Collins," she said, "you are a soldier. You understand the land. My people have lived on that land since before the first white man saw the sky. The long spring, the Swai Dai, is not just water. It is our memory. It is our church. The graves of my grandmothers are in that valley. The stories of our people are painted on the rocks. You would drown." She pointed to the window. "Your government signed the Treaty of 1868. It promised we could keep our sacred lands. Mr. Blackwell is not just building a dam. He is breaking a treaty. He is not just stealing water. He is taking our souls." She walked to the desk. She placed her hand on the ledger. "You call this book proof. You call this fruit of the poison tree. I call it a list of the men who are murderers. But my proof is not in that book. My proof is in my blood. It is in my name. It is in the ground." She held the major's gaze. "You are a man of honor. I have heard it. Cole Whitaker saved your life. Now, I am asking you to save the lives of my people. Do not let these men in their clean suits tell you that law is more important than life. Do not let them drown our ancestors for a railroad." The room was silent. The lawyer looked furious. His smooth facade cracked. Cole watched Collins. The major's face was unreadable, but he saw the man's hand clench on the desk. Collins stood up. He was a soldier again. "Mr. Harris," Collins said, his voice booming, "this fort is a federal installation. The breaking of a federal treaty gives me all the jurisdiction I need. The testimony of a citizen of the dying nation is valid in my court. I am issuing a military injunction, effective immediately. All work on the so-called Construction Zone A will cease for 10 days, pending a full site inspection by me, personally. Major, you cannot, the lawyer sputtered. I have Collins roared. This hearing is over. Adjutant, prepare the order, and show Mr. Harris the gate. Cole felt a rush of adrenaline, of pure, sharp victory. They had done it. They walked out of the office, Tala beside him, into the bright sunlight of the parade ground. They were exhausted, but they had won. You were, Cole started. You were magnificent. I spoke the truth, she said simply. The yard was full of people, soldiers, teamsters moving goods, merchants, a crowd. From that crowd, a man moved, his motions fluid and fast. He was dressed as a Mexican freighter. He was holding a skinning knife. It was Valdez. Cole saw the movement, the flash of steel, the eyes. Valdez was not going for him. He was going for Tala. He was 2 feet from her when Cole hit him. Cole's shoulders smashed into the assassin's chest, driving him backward. The knife skittered across the dirt. Cole was on top of him, his hands grabbing the man's throat. He drew back his fist. All the rage, all the fear of the last weeks, culminating in this one, killing blow. He saw Valdez's eyes. They were not filled with hate. They were just empty. A man doing a job. We do not kill a surrendered man. The vow, his own vow, in the cave. Cole roared, a sound of frustration, and instead of hitting him, he grabbed Valdez's head and slammed it against the hard-packed earth. Once, twice, the man went limp. Cole was breathing like a bellows. He stood up, shaking. Soldiers were running toward them, rifles leveled. He is an assassin, Cole yelled, pointing at the unconscious man. He tried to kill her, tie him up. As the soldiers grabbed Valdez, pulling him up, Cole felt Tala's hand on his arm. Her touch was trembling, but it steadied him. He had almost broken his vow. He had almost become them. Cole. The voice was a croak. He turned, stumbling through the main gate, a ghost in the noon sun. Was Kai. He was a wreck. His shirt was a stiff, black mat of dried blood. His left arm was bound in a filthy rag, his rifle used as a crutch. He was gaunt, his eyes burned deep in their sockets. But he was walking. He was alive. Kai Tala ran to him, catching him as he staggered. He held onto her, his face a mask of pain and terrible urgency. He looked past her, at Cole. I made it, he gasped. I drew them south. Valdez, he shot me, but I lost him in the canyons. I circled back. You are safe now, my cousin, Tala wept, holding him. No, Kai panted, pushing her away. No one is safe. Cole, you must listen. He grabbed Cole's shirt. The injunction, the paper, it is too late. What Cole's blood ran cold. I saw it, Kai said, his words coming in desperate bursts. I came back through the high valley. They are not waiting. Blackwell is not waiting for your 30 days. He is working, right now. What do you mean, Collins said, striding over, his face grim. He is working at night, Kai said, clinging to Cole for support. He has 100 men, maybe more. He has lamps. They are blasting. They are moving earth. The dam. It is already being built. He started the night we escaped. He is breaking his own law. He knows you are coming. He will have the valley flooded before your 10-day order even arrives. The victory turned to ash in Cole's mouth. The legal paper in Collins' hand was worthless. Collins looked at the paper, then at Kai, then at the unconscious Valdez. He was furious. His military authority had been defied, openly and arrogantly. They are making a fool of me, Collins said, his voice a low growl. They are winning, Cole said. They are winning because they are not playing by your rules. They stood there, the 4 of them, a small, defeated island in the middle of the busy fort. The 10-day injunction was useless. What do we do? Tala asked. Her voice was small. Cole looked at Collins. He looked at Kai. He looked at Tala. The legal path was a dead end. "We ride," Cole said. "Not as an army. We ride as an inspection party. A legal moral raid." Collins looked at him. "Explain." "You have your injunction," Cole said, tapping the paper. "It is a legal order. We are going to deliver it. You, me, Tala, and Kai. We ride as an official party. You, as the military authority. Me, as a federal witness. And them." He gestured to Tala and Kai, as the landowners, protected by treaty. "Pike will have the vultures," Collins argued. "They will fire on us." "That is the risk," Cole said. "But we do not go alone. We stop in Dry Mesa. We gather the people Blackwell broke, the ranchers he foreclosed on, the Mexican freighters he starved. We gather the families of the men Pike murdered. We ride to that dam, not as a war party, but as a community, with the law in our hand." Kai, despite his wound, stood straighter. "The dying will ride with us." Collins looked at the three of them. The deserter, the warrior, the weaver. It was madness. It was an invitation to a massacre. But it was also the only thing left. "If Pike fires on a federal officer, on unarmed civilians," Collins said, the plan forming in his head, "he will hang." "That is the gamble," Cole said. Major, a young telegraph operator, ran up, his face pale. "Sir, a message from Dry Mesa, from Sheriff Pike. He says he knows you have issued an order, and he says the dam site is on private railroad land, and any federal interference will be met with force." A leak, the lawyer, Harris, must have sent a wire before he left. "He is daring us," Collins said, his voice soft and deadly. "He knows we are coming." "He will be waiting," Kai said. "He will hold the pass. He has men." "And he has a new gun," Cole said, a sick feeling in his stomach. "The railroad delivered a Gatling gun for security last month. I saw the crate. A Gatling gun, a machine, against men on horseback." 10 days, Cole said, looking at the sky. "He has 10 days on the paper, but we have maybe 36 hours. 36 hours before that valley is lost forever." Collins made his decision. "Adjutant," he roared, "my horse and a detail of 10 men. They will be an honor guard. They will carry sidearms only. We ride in 1 hour. Find a doctor for this man." He pointed to Kai. Kai shook his head. "No doctor, just bandages. And my rifle. I am riding—" Cole, Collins, Tala, and Kai. The alliance was set. They were riding into a trap, against a machine gun, with nothing but a piece of paper and the truth. They did not ride in force. They rode as a statement. Major Collins, in his full dress uniform, his saber at his hip, led his 10 cavalrymen. They were followed by Cole, his face set like stone, and Tala, her back straight, her eyes on the horizon. Kai, his arm tightly bound, his face pale but resolute, rode beside her. Behind them, a strange army followed. The ranchers from Dry Mesa whom Blackwell had broken, their faces grim. The Mexican freighters who had been denied water. And as they reached the high mesas, a silent stream of dying families emerged from the canyons, on ponies and on foot, joining the procession. They were not armed for war. They were armed with their presence. They were a community, riding to reclaim its heart. They reached the head of the valley as night fell. The sky, for the first time in 2 years, was a bruised, heavy purple. The clouds pregnant with rain. Below them, the construction site was a pit of hellish light. 100 men, maybe more, worked under the glare of massive industrial lanterns, their shadows like frantic, giant insects. The sounds of steam engines, blasting and shouting, echoed up the canyon walls. Sheriff Pike was waiting for them, as they knew he would be. The main road into the valley was blocked by a barricade, and above it, on a high ledge, the unmistakable, multi-barreled snout of a Gatling gun glinted in the lantern light. "That is as far as you go," Major Pike's voice boomed, amplified by the rock. "This is private property. Turn back, or you will be fired upon." Collins reined in his horse. His small honor guard was hopelessly outgunned. "This is a legal inspection. Pike, I have a federal injunction. Your paper means nothing here. I have my orders. This is your last warning." A cold, light rain began to fall. It was the first rain of the season. "He will do it," Cole said, his voice low. "He will slaughter us all and call it self-defense." Tala touched his arm. Her face was calm, illuminated by the distant, hellish light from the valley. "He guards the front door, but he does not know the house." She turned to Collins. "Major, there is another way. The Thunder Door. It is a pass, narrow, for one man at a time. It will take us behind him. It will put us inside the site." Collins looked at the sheer cliff face. "It is impossible." "It is not," Kai said, his voice hoarse. "It is our way." Collins made his choice. He dismounted. "Sergeant, hold this position. Do not fire. Wait for my signal." He, Cole, Kai, and Tala, followed by 10 of the Dine warriors and 5 of the toughest ranchers, slipped into the shadows. The rain was falling harder now, a blessing, masking their sounds, washing the dust from the air. Tala led them to a crack in the rock, a fissure so narrow they had to move sideways. The pass was a winding, treacherous climb in the wet darkness. Tala moved with an unnerving confidence. She seemed to feel the path rather than see it. "How do you know the way?" Cole whispered, his hand on the damp stone. "I am listening," she whispered back. "To the water. It has a breath. I feel it on the rock. It guides me." They climbed for an hour, a slow, agonizing ascent, before emerging onto a narrow ledge. Below them, not 50 yards away, was the raw, gaping wound of the construction site. They were inside. The dam was half-built, a monstrous curve of rock and raw timber. A steam engine powered a huge conveyor belt, hauling slurry and rock up the face. Men were setting charges, their shouts faint over the hiss of the rain and the chug of the machines. "We have to stop the work," Cole said, his eyes scanning the layout. His old cavalry training, the art of the raid, took over. "We cannot just serve the paper. We have to stop the machines." He looked at Kai. "Can you create a diversion?" Kai's face, tight with pain, split in a wolfish grin. "A fire at their supply tent. They will run." "Tala," Cole said, pointing to the conveyor. "That is the heart. The mixer. If it stops, they stop." "I see it," she said. "I am going for the blasting wires," Cole said. "They are on that scaffold. If they cannot blast, they cannot work." He looked at them. "This impossible team. 10 minutes. Then Collins will make his move. Go." Like shadows, they split. Kai, despite his wounded arm, moved with a silent, deadly grace toward the supply tents. Tala slipped between the boilers, heading for the chugging conveyor. Cole began to climb the slick, wet timbers of the scaffold, his knife in his teeth. Kai was first. He reached the tents, pulled a burning brand from a watchman's fire, and thrust it into a canvas tent marked black powder. He did not wait. He vanished. The tent did not explode, but it began to burn. Thick, acrid smoke pouring out. "Fire," a man yelled. "Fire in the powder tent." The cry caused a wave of panic. Half the work crew, terrified of the blasting powder, dropped their tools and ran. Guards were drawn from their posts, shouting in confusion. At the same time, Tala reached the conveyor. It was a massive, clanking chain of buckets, carrying a thick, gray slurry. She looked around. The rain had formed a deep puddle of mud and moss near the boiler. She began grabbing handfuls of the thick, fibrous mud, shoving it into the gears, into the chute, mixing it with the cement. She worked with a frantic, desperate speed. The conveyor groaned. The added weight and grit was too much. The belt shuddered, skipped its track, and jammed. The massive steam engine that drove it whined. The pressure building, until a belt snapped with the sound of a cannon shot. The entire operation ground to a halt. Above, on the scaffold, Cole found the nest of wires leading from the detonator box. He began to cut them, his hands moving fast, severing the connection. The sudden silence, the absence of the machines, was deafening. A foreman was shouting. From a large command tent, Horace Blackwell emerged, his fine suit spattered with mud. "What is the meaning of this? Get it running now." Cole, Tala, and Kai tried to regroup in the sudden chaos, moving toward a dark patch of rocks near the canyon wall, but they were cut off. A figure stepped out from behind a steam boiler, his long rifle leveled. It was Valdez. He was not alone. Sheriff Pike was with him, his pistol drawn, his face a mask of triumphant rage. "End of the line. Whitaker," Pike sneered. They were trapped. The rock wall was at their back. Valdez and Pike were in front. Nowhere left to run. Pike's eyes moved to Tala. He leered, his gaze slimy and possessive. "All this trouble, for a piece of a land, and a piece of squaw." He laughed, a wet, ugly sound. "I heard my men wondering about you, girl. All this time, running with this white man. They were making bets." Kai, weak, bleeding, and trembling with rage, stepped half in front of Tala. He was buying Cole a second, trying to draw the fire. He leaned close to Tala, as if to comfort her, but his voice was a low, challenging whisper, a way of facing the enemy's ugliness by repeating it, defying it. "You still a virgin?" The words, a crude joke he had overheard the vultures tell, hung in the rainy air, an ultimate act of defilement. Pike laughed. Valdez's mouth twisted in a smirk. Cole Whitaker stepped forward. He moved slowly, deliberately, placing himself directly in front of Tala, shielding her with his body. He was not looking at Pike. He was looking at Valdez, but his words, calm and clear, were for Tala. "Not for long, Darlin," he said. The words hit the air. Pike's laugh died. Cole held the pause. A single, perfect beat in the rainy night. Then he finished, his voice soft, but carrying all the weight of his soul. "When you choose it, and I'll wait till you do." He had taken their filth and turned it into a vow. He had given her back her power, her autonomy, in the face of their guns. Tala's breath caught in her throat. Valdez stared at Cole. The hunter, the professional, was visibly shaken. This was the man who had knocked him out on the parade ground, the man who could have killed him, but had not, the man who had honored a vow. This was a man of a different caliber. Valdez was paid to kill warriors, to hunt men like Kai. He was not paid to be part of this gutter humiliation. His rifle barrel, aimed at Cole's chest, wavered. It dropped, just an inch. Pike saw it. He saw the hesitation. "What are you waiting for, you coward?" Pike screamed. Shoot them all." Valdez turned his head. His decision made, he looked at Pike with flat, leaden contempt. "No, I am done." Traitor, Pike shrieked. He raised his own pistol, not at Cole, but at Valdez. He fired. The shot echoed, impossibly loud in the narrow space. Valdez grunted, a sound of surprise. He looked down at his chest, at the dark stain spreading over his shirt. He looked back at Pike, his eyes wide. Then he slumped to the ground. "Now everyone sees who you are," Pike Cole roared, using the moment. "I am the law," Pike bellowed, a desperate, mad sound. He raised his pistol, aiming it at Cole. "If I cannot have it, no one will." The scream came from Horace Blackwell. He was at the edge of the site, near a small, secondary detonator box, a backup system. He slammed the plunger down. The world exploded. A massive section of the half-built dam, the part that was holding back a cofferdam full of mud and the night's new rain, disintegrated. A wave of brown sludge, splintered timber, and rocks roared out. It was not a flood. It was a landslide, an avalanche of mud, and it was heading straight for the sacred valley, straight for the exposed, fragile mouth of the long spring. "No!" Tala screamed, the sound torn from her. "The spring! It will bury the spring!" Kai cried, his face ashen. He staggered toward the others, the ranchers and the Dine who were now pouring into the site. "Stones! We must build a cushion here, we must block it now," he began directing them, grabbing rocks, his pain forgotten. Cole saw it, the mud flow, and he saw a heavy winch cable, as thick as his arm, hanging from a construction derrick. He had one insane idea. He ran, grabbing the heavy, greasy cable. The ground was already crumbling. He leaped across the widening chasm, landing hard on the other side, scrambling on the slick rock. The mudslide was 10 seconds away. He wrapped the steel rope around a massive granite boulder, pulling it taut, anchoring it. The mud hit. It was a physical blow, a deafening, grinding roar. Cole was nearly swept away. The cable snapped taut, vibrating with a sound like a giant guitar string. It held the cable, stretched across the spillway, diverted the main tonnage of the slide. It did not stop it, but it turned the worst of it, sending thousands of tons of sludge into a side canyon, away from the spring's opening. Tala was on her knees, her hands plunged into the mud, her voice rising in a desperate, keening song in her own language, a prayer to the earth. Cease and desist. The voice was like the judgment of God. On the ridge above, Major Collins and his 10 soldiers stood, their rifles leveled at the chaotic scene. "In the name of the United States Army, I order you to stand down. Sheriff Pike, you are under arrest for the murder of this man." Collins pointed at the body of Valdez, which lay in the rain. The copper vultures, their leader exposed, their plan in ruins, and facing 10 angry cavalrymen, dropped their guns. The work crew, just hired men caught in a war they did not understand, raised their hands. Pike, his face a mask of shocked disbelief, turned to run. 2 of Collins's soldiers were on him in a second, slamming him to the ground. They cuffed him. They arrested the stunned demolition crew and the terrified Blackwell. The immediate danger was over. The rain fell, harder now, washing the grime from the air, turning the site into a sea of mud. The spring, choked and battered, was not dead. Cole made his way back across the wreckage. He was shaking, covered in mud, his hands raw and bleeding from the cable. He found Tala. She was still kneeling, her body trembling violently, the shock and the victory hitting her at once. He reached down and pulled her to her feet. She collapsed against him, her strength completely gone. He held her. He did not say anything. He just held her, his face buried in her wet hair, his own body shaking. He kissed her forehead, a rough, desperate gesture of relief. "It is all right," he whispered, his voice cracking. "We held." He pulled back, his hands cupping her face, his thumbs wiping the tears and mud from her cheeks. "From now on, Tla-ili," he said, his voice rough. Everything you do, everything that happens, it is your choice. I promise you." She looked up at him, her eyes wide and luminous in the chaotic lantern light. She nodded, a single, sharp movement. She believed him. The rain fell, a cold, steady curtain, washing the mud and the blood into the same brown streams. The chaos of the construction site had frozen, replaced by a stunned, terrible silence. Major Collins, his face like granite, stood over the body of Valdez. His 10 soldiers, rifles ready, had secured Horace Blackwell, Sheriff Pike, and the remaining copper vultures. The community, the ranchers, the freighters, and the Dine stood in the mud, witnesses to the arrest, their faces pale in the lantern light. "This is not a construction site," Collins's voice boomed, cutting through the rain. "This is a crime scene, and by the authority of the United States Army, this is now a federal tribunal." Horace Blackwell, his fine suit ruined, his hands cuffed, laughed, a high, thin sound. "A tribunal, you have no authority. This is railroad land. This is a civil matter." Mr. Harris Blackwell shouted. The lawyer, Harris, who had arrived in Blackwell's wagon, stepped forward, his umbrella held by a trembling assistant. "Major," Harris said, trying to regain his smooth tone, "this is highly irregular. You are interfering with private enterprise. These men," he gestured to Blackwell and Pike, "are victims of an armed insurrection." "They are victims," Collins roared. "Of their own greed. I have a ledger, Mr. Harris, showing bribery and conspiracy." "Illegally obtained," Harris snapped. "Worthless." "Then let us hear from the people," Collins said. He turned to the crowd. "You have been silent. You have been afraid. Now is the time. Speak the truth." A man named Jedediah, a rancher whose land bordered the valley, stepped forward. His face was worn, his hands knotted. "He broke me. Blackwell. He called my note. 30% interest. He said I had 1 week to pay, or he would take my land. All because I refused to sell him my water rights." "He is a liar," Blackwell shouted. "Am I?" Jedediah's voice cracked. "He did it to all of us. He starved us. He choked us. He set Pike on us, to tax us, to fine us, until we had nothing left to sell. He is a thief in a suit." "These are the desperate words of failed men," Harris argued. "Then what about the words of a dying one?" Cole said. He knelt in the mud beside Valdez. The hunter was fading, the rain washing the life from him. Major Collins knelt opposite Cole, his expression grim. "Son," Collins said, his voice softer, "why did he shoot you?" Valdez looked at Cole, then at Tala, who stood just behind him. His breath was a wet rattle. "Pike," he gasped, his hand gripping Cole's sleeve. "Pike shot me. He shot me, because I was going to tell the truth." The truth about what Collins pressed. "The ambush, in the arroyo. Finney. It was not Kai. It was Pike. It was the vultures. I was there. He paid me to hunt the dine." Valdez coughed, blood on his lips. "But I am not a murderer. Not like this." He looked at Tala, his eyes pleading for an absolution he did not deserve. "He shot me, because I said no." Valdez's hand went limp. He was gone. The silence that followed was heavier than the mountain. The crowd, the soldiers, everyone, stared at Sheriff Pike. The lawman had been exposed as a common murderer. "This changes nothing," Harris yelled, his voice strained, desperate. "This is still railroad land. The dam is for the public good, for agriculture, for the future of this territory. You cannot stop progress because of the sentimental superstitions of a few savages and the words of a dead outlaw." Tala stepped forward, the rain plastering her dark hair to her face. She looked not at Harris, but at Collins, and then at the ranchers from Dry Mesa. "You speak of public good," she said, her voice clear and strong. "But your public good is a private theft. You speak of the future, but your future drowns our past. The law cannot be built on the graves of my grandmothers. You speak of agriculture. What do you know of this land? You would kill the spring that feeds the entire valley, all so you can sell the water that is already ours." Her gaze was fierce. "We are not savages. We are the people who know this land. We know how the water breathes. You do not need to drown us to find water. You only need to listen." Cole stepped beside her. "She is right. Major, there is another way. The Dine have used it for generations. Canals, diversion channels. We can share the spring, guide the water to the flatlands, to the ranches, without destroying the source. We can all drink from the same cup." The ranchers from Dry Mesa murmured. They looked at the Dini, at Kai, who stood clutching his arm, and they saw not enemies, but survivors. They saw people who knew how to live where they only knew how to struggle. Harris saw he was losing. He looked at Blackwell, his face pale with panic. Horace Blackwell had been watching, his calculating eyes taking in the scene. He saw the soldiers. He saw the crowd. He saw his empire, built on paper and fear, dissolving in the mud. He was a cornered rat. A young girl, the daughter of Jedediah the rancher, had crept forward, her eyes wide, watching the man in chains. She was perhaps 10 years old. She stood too close. Blackwell moved. He was a snake. He exploded from his guards, shoving the two soldiers aside. In one fluid motion, he grabbed the girl, Sarah, pulling her against his chest. A boot knife, small and bright, was suddenly in his hand, its point pressed against the child's throat. Back Blackwell screamed, his voice a raw shriek. "Everyone back, or I will kill her, I swear to God, I will!" The crowd gasped. Jedediah cried out. The soldiers raised their rifles, but they could not shoot. "Blackwell, do not be a fool," Collins yelled. "Get me a wagon," Blackwell shrieked, dragging the girl backward. "Get me my wagon and clear the pass now, or she dies." Cole's hand moved to the gun that was not there. He was frozen. "No." The voice was Kai's. He stepped forward, his wounded arm held tight, his face a mask of old pain. He looked at Blackwell, and he looked at the terrified child. He was seeing his sister, 7 years old, in the snow. "You want a hostage?" Kai said, his voice calm. "Take me. Let the girl go." "Stay back." Blackwell waved the knife. "I am a warrior," Kai said, taking another slow step. "The man you have been hunting, I am worth more than her. A fair trade. Her for me." Blackwell hesitated, his eyes darting between Kai and the soldiers. He was confused by the offer. In that second of hesitation, Kai lunged. He did not go for Blackwell. He went for the girl. He shoved Sarah, pushing her sprawling into the mud, out of Blackwell's grasp. Blackwell reacted instantly, blindly, stabbing with the knife. He drove the blade deep into Kai's left shoulder, the same one that Valdez had shot. Kai roared, a sound of pure agony, and staggered back, collapsing to his knees. Blackwell was free. He did not pause. He turned and sprinted, running for his own heavy wagon, which sat, horses already harnessed, near the command tent. He scrambled onto the driver's seat, grabbing the reins. Cole was already moving. He was a horseman. He vaulted onto the nearest cavalry mount, tearing the reins free from the hitching post. He dug his heels in. Blackwell whipped the horses, the wagon lurching, its wheels spinning in the mud. He headed for the dam itself, the broken section, aiming for the fastest path to the canyon road. Cole spurred his horse. The cavalry mount was fast, trained for battle. He closed the distance, the horse's hooves throwing great sheets of mud. He rode alongside the lurching, speeding wagon. He had no gun. He had his hands. He gathered himself, matching the horse's speed to the wagon. He rose in the stirrups and leaped. He left the saddle, flying through the rain, and landed hard on the driver's seat next to Blackwell. Blackwell screamed, lashing out with the knife. Cole blocked it with his forearm, the blade slicing his sleeve. He drove his fist into Blackwell's face. Blackwell reeled, and Cole hit him again. The man was a creature of ledgers and offices. He was no match for a man built of iron and rage. The wagon was careening. The horses panicked, running blind along the slick, crumbling edge of the dam breach. The chasm Cole had diverted the mudslide into was 100 feet below. Cole grabbed the reins with one hand, hauling the horses back. With the other, he pinned Blackwell to the seat. He raised his fist for the last blow, the killing blow. He saw Blackwell's terrified, pathetic face, streaming with blood and rain. He saw Valdez. He heard his own vow. He lowered his fist. He would not become him. He would not break his oath. He pulled the heavy steel cuffs from his belt, the ones he had taken from the deputy in Dry Mesa. He wrenched Blackwell's arms behind his back and snapped the cuffs on. He pulled the wagon to a halt, the lead horses snorting, their hooves just 2 feet from the drop. He sat for a moment, his breath tearing at his lungs, the rain washing the blood from his knuckles. He had won. He had won without breaking himself. He turned the wagon around and drove it back, a slow, triumphant march. He delivered the bound and weeping Horace Blackwell to Major Collins. Collins looked at Cole. then at Blackwell. He nodded once, a gesture of profound respect. It is over. He turned to his sergeant. This project is hereby seized by the United States Army, pending a full federal investigation. Take these 2 men. He pointed to the cuffed Pike and Blackwell. To the fort. They will be held for trial. For murder, for conspiracy, and for treason against the United States. The crisis was broken. The rain began to soften. The heavy clouds breaking. The first hint of a pale dawn was visible to the east. The community, ranchers and Dine, stood together in the mud, exhausted. "Major, Jedediah, the rancher, said the dam is stopped, but the drought is not. What do we do now?" Collins looked at Cole, and then at Tala. Cole spoke, his voice carrying in the quiet morning air. "We do what Tala said. We learn. We work together. We build the canals. We manage the spring. We do not own it. We share it." Jedediah looked at Kai, who was being tended by a cavalry medic, his face pale but his eyes bright. Jedediah walked over. He was a proud man, a man who had hated the Dine his whole life. He stood before Kai and removed his hat. "We would be honored," Jedediah said, the words costing him, "if you would teach us." Kai looked at him. He saw the shift. He saw the new world. He nodded. "We will teach." The crowd began to disperse, to find shelter, to tend to the wounded, to process the night. Cole found Tala. She was standing at the edge of the site, looking at the mouth of the long spring. It was choked with mud, but beneath it, he could hear the faint, clear gurgle of clean water, fighting its way free. He stood beside her. They did not touch. "He is alive," Cole said, meaning Kai. The medic said the knife missed his heart. "He is strong." "He is Dine." She said she was watching the water. "Tala," he said. She turned to him. Her face was clean, washed by the rain. She looked at him, her gaze traveling over his bruised face, his cut arm, his steady eyes. "I told you my fear," she said, her voice quiet, "that I would be owned. I belong to no one. Cole Whitaker. Not to my people, not to this land, and not to you." He met her gaze. "I know." She stepped closer to him. The sun was just beginning to touch the highest rim of the canyon, flooding the valley with a pale, hopeful light. "But," she said, and she reached out, her fingers touching the back of his hand, a light, trembling touch. "I choose to walk with you." The fragile dawn was a liar. The break in the clouds was not a promise of peace. It was a gathering of breath. The rain, which had softened to a drizzle, suddenly returned with a fury, as if angered by the defiance of the people in the valley. It did not fall in drops. It fell in solid, white sheets. Major Collins, his face grim, was organizing his men to transport the prisoners when the sound began. It was a low, grinding roar from high up the canyon walls, a sound that had nothing to do with men or machines. Kai, his shoulder bandaged, his face slick with sweat and rain, pushed himself upright. "Listen," he commanded. Everyone froze. The sound was the earth itself, groaning in protest. "Landslide," Cole said, his eyes scanning the cliffs. "The blasting. The flood. It has loosened the rock." The spring, Tala cried, pointing. The mudslide Cole had diverted was bad, but this was worse. The entire south wall of the valley, weakened by Blackwell's explosions, was beginning to move. A slow, terrible river of rock and mud heading straight for the long spring. The small, makeshift cushion they had built was not enough. "We have to build a wall," Kai shouted. "A dike! Here before the channel." But the valley floor was a sea of mud. The people were scattered, exhausted, stunned. They stared at the new, impossible threat. "He is right, Jedediah." The rancher bellowed. "To the rocks, move now." But there was no order. It was a panic. Kai stumbled to a high point, a boulder that was still dry. He saw a Dine elder carrying a small drum. "Hatali," he called. "Sing, sing the stone song now." The old man, who had been silent through the entire ordeal, looked at Kai. He nodded. He began to beat the drum. A slow, steady, powerful rhythm. 1, 2, 3, 4. It was the rhythm of a heart. "Listen to the drum," Kai roared, his voice cracking. "Lift on the beat, pull on the beat. It is the only way." The sound cut through the panic. It gave them a spine. "He is right," Cole yelled. "Grabbing a fallen timber. It is a cadence, like moving artillery. Lift together, listen." He, Jedediah, and 3 ranchers put their shoulders to the timber. The old man hit the drum. Bum! They pushed. The log moved. Bum! They pushed again. It was a miracle. The scattered, terrified crowd became an engine. The Dine, who knew this rhythm in their bones, began to move. Grabbing stones, moving in time. The ranchers, soldiers, and freighters. Lost at first. Found the beat. It was a language they all understood. Sandbags shouted one of the Mexican freighters, who had seen floods in his own country. He and his men ran to the wagons, grabbing empty grain sacks. They began filling them with mud, with sand, with anything, passing them hand over hand, their movements matching the drum. The women of Dry Mesa, who had followed their husbands in fear, now took command. Jedediah's wife, a stern, capable woman named Martha, organized the kitchens from the back of a supply wagon. "They need coffee. They need food. You two, tear up those blankets. We need bandages. The soldier is not the only one hurt." They built a medical station in a protected tent. They built a kitchen in the rain. The veterans, the old soldiers from Collins's troop and the ex-cavalrymen like Cole, instinctively organized the flow of materials. They created 2 lines, one for those bringing rock, one for those returning, preventing a bottleneck, their shouted commands falling into the rhythm of the drum. It was a strange and beautiful thing, this community born in the mud, in the middle of the night, under the threat of total destruction. They were no longer Anglo, Mexican, or Dine. They were a single creature, fighting the mountain. The wall of rock and sandbags grew. A low, curved dike, designed with Dine knowledge to deflect, not to block, but the rain was too fast. The slide was too big. A section of the new wall, hastily built, began to crumble. A slurry of mud and water poured through the gap. "It is not holding," a man screamed. "It is going to break." The line faltered. The rhythm broke. Panic returned. "A beam. We need a central brace," Cole shouted, looking around frantically. He saw a massive timber, part of the wrecked derrick, half submerged in the mud. It was perfect. It was also impossibly heavy. "Help me," he roared. 5 men, 2 soldiers and 3 ranchers, joined him. They strained, their boots sinking, but the log was too deep. "It will not move." "It will," Cole said. He set his shoulders. "Wait for the drum now." The drum beat. They heaved. The log shifted, a single, grudging inch. Again. They pulled it free. They dragged it, a slow, agonizing journey, toward the breach in the dike. The water was knee-deep, icy and pulling at them. "Shove it into the gap," Collins yelled, his uniform gone, his face covered in mud, working beside them. "It will hold the rock." They got it into position, but the force of the mudslide was too strong. The log began to bow, to shift. "It needs to be anchored," Cole yelled. On the far side, someone has to hold it. To hold it meant standing in the main spillway, on the wrong side of the wall, and bracing the beam with his own body until the others could pile rocks against it. It was a suicide mission. The beam would snap, or the man would be buried. "I will go," Cole said. He did not look at anyone. He began to wade into the breach. "Cole, no!" Tala cried. She ran to him, grabbing his arm. The water swirled around her waist. "It is the only way," he said. "Then you will not go alone." She held out her hand. In it was a small, wet leather pouch, tied with sinew, It is from my grandmother, sage and turquoise and pine pitch, for protection. Keep it and come back." He took the small amulet. He clutched it in his hand. He looked at her, his heart too full to speak. He nodded. He waded into the breach. The water was a physical blow, trying to knock him from his feet. He reached the other side, staggering. He turned, putting his back against a solid rock wall, and planted his feet. Now he bellowed, "Push it!" The men on the other side pushed the massive beam across the gap. Cole caught the end, his body screaming in protest, guiding it into a notch in the rock. The beam was in place. The full force of the mudslide hit it. The timber groaned, vibrating, threatening to snap. Cole held it, his legs shaking, his back screaming, the weight of the mountain trying to crush him. "Rocks, pile the rocks," Collins commanded. "Bury the beam now." The line of people worked with a desperate, frantic speed, but it was dark, chaotic. "We need light. We cannot see." Kai, who had been sitting, his face gray with blood loss, pulled himself up. He grabbed a torch from the kitchen fire. He staggered to the top of the dike, his wounded arm useless, but his good arm holding the torch high. The flame lit the scene, the rain hissing against it. "Do not stop," he shouted, his voice a rasp. "Do not look at the water. Look at the drum. Look at the light." He held the torch, a defiant, wounded statue, keeping the rhythm, keeping the hope. Cole felt the pressure on the beam lessen as the rocks piled up. He held on for another minute, another two. "It is holding," Jedediah yelled. "The wall is holding Cole. Get out now." Cole released his grip. He was shaking so badly he could barely stand. He half swam, half crawled back through the gap, and hands grabbed him, pulling him onto the safe side of the dike. He collapsed, his lungs burning. The small amulet from Tala still clutched tight in his hand. The dike held. The mud flow, diverted, roared past them, filling the side canyon, leaving the long spring choked, but alive. And as if a switch had been thrown, the rain stopped. The clouds, exhausted, began to break apart. A single, clear ray of morning sun, pale gold, lanced through the gap in the canyon wall and struck the new, ugly dike. The silence was absolute. No rain, no sliding rock, no shouting. Into that silence, a new sound emerged, faint but clear, a gurgle, a steady, insistent shuss. Tala was the first to hear it. She ran to the mouth of the spring, where the mud was thickest. She fell to her knees, plunging her arms in, clearing the debris. The gurgle became a flow. Clear, clean water. The sacred water of the Suai Dai pushed the last of Blackwell's mud aside and began to run free. The spring was alive. The lifeline was saved. A single, ragged cheer went up from a cavalryman. It was answered by a rancher, and then the entire valley. All of them. Dine, Anglo, Mexican. Survivors. Erupted. They yelled. They wept. They hugged. Strangers holding each other in the mud. Their faces turned to the new sun. Kai watched them. He saw the water, and he saw the people, united. He kept his feet for a long moment. The torch still held high. Then, his duty done, he smiled. A faint, beautiful smile. "Water remains," he whispered in his own language. The words for Cole and Tala alone. The people remain. Water remains. The people remain. He crumpled to the ground, his torch extinguishing in the mud. That night, the camp was quiet. The prisoners were gone, under heavy guard, back to Fort Sheffield. The people were too tired to celebrate. They slept, huddled around small fires, in the shadow of the wall they had built. Kai was alive. The army medic had stitched him, given him laudanum, and he was sleeping a deep, healing sleep in a tent, guarded by his own people. Cole sat by a small fire, rubbing warmth back into his raw hands. He opened his fist. The small leather amulet was still there, pressed flat, He looked at it, this small, strange token of her faith. The flap of a nearby tent opened. It was a small, clean tent, a medicine lodge the Dine had erected, filled with the clean smell of sage and juniper. Tala stood in the opening. She did not say anything. She just looked at him. He stood up, his body aching, and went to her. He did not enter the lodge. He just stood at the opening. She stepped aside. An invitation. He went in. It was warm. A small bedroll was laid out. A single, clean lantern burned. She gestured for him to sit. He sat on the bedroll, and she sat beside him. They did not speak. The ordeal was too large, the words too small. She looked at his hands, which were cut and bleeding from the cable and the rocks. She made a soft sound of pity. She took his hand in hers, her fingers gentle. She began to clean the wounds with a soft cloth and a warm, herbal solution. Her touch was light. It was not a lover's touch. It was a healer's. But as she worked, her thumb brushed his palm, and a jolt, clean and sharp as lightning, went up his arm. He did not pull away. He did not move. He just watched her face, the way the lantern light softened the proud lines of her jaw, the way her eyelashes cast shadows. When she was done, she did not let go of his hand. He laced his fingers with hers. It was an easy, natural fit. His rough, calloused hand, and her slim, strong one. They sat in the warm, herbal silence, just holding hands. It was more intimate than any kiss. It was a sharing of warmth, a sharing of survival. He knew, in that moment, what his promise on the dam had meant. When you are ready, it was not a question or a demand. It was a statement. He would wait. He would wait a lifetime. "You saved the spring," she said, her voice a whisper. "We saved it," he replied, "all of us." He looked at their joined hands. "I meant what I said. Your choice, always." She squeezed his hand. "I know." Outside, high against the newly cleared stars, a lone eagle circled, its cry a thin, sharp note of freedom. In the center of the camp, a fire that had been tended by a dying elder suddenly flared, a bed of coals glowing a deep, steady red, like a heart that had been broken, and was now, slowly, being blown back to life. Tala released his hand. She reached for something in her pack. It was a simple cord, braided from yucca fiber and threads of red and black wool. It was not a gift. It was an object of meaning. When a dying man survives a great battle, she said, or a great test, he is sometimes given a new name, a war name. To mark that, he is changed. You are changed. Cole Whitaker. She held the cord out to him. "I do not know your true name, but I will give you one." She spoke the name, her voice soft. The dying words a music he did not understand, but felt it was a name that meant he who stands in the water. She tied the simple, braided cord around his left wrist. It was not a chain. It was not a ring. It was a marker, a bond, a sign that he belonged, not to her, but with her, and with this land. He looked at the braid, and then at her. He had no words. He just touched the cord, a gesture of acceptance. The victory at the dam was not an ending. It was the beginning of the real work. The journey back to Dry Mesa was a quiet, sober procession. The prisoners, Blackwell and Pike, were gone, marched under heavy guard to Fort Sheffield to await a federal trial. What was left was the community, muddy, exhausted, and fundamentally broken. They had won the war, but now they had to learn how to live in the peace. Dry Mesa held its breath. The first act of the new world took place in the town hall, a building that still smelled of stale beer and fear. Jedediah, the rancher, his face cleaned of mud but forever changed, stood before the council. "Sheriff Pike is a murderer," he said, his voice quiet, but it filled the room. "He is in federal chains, but his name is still on our books. I make a motion to blemish his record, to blemish his name, and to vote him out of office, officially, so that his authority is broken clean." The vote was unanimous. The town, in its first act of unity, had formally cut the cancer out. The second act was harder. Blackwell was gone, but his debts remained, his creditors. The faceless banks and railroad suppliers from the East sent men in clean suits, men much like the lawyer Harris, to assess the damage to their assets. They saw the ruined dam, the seized ledger, and the united town. They realized the project was dead. The townspeople, the ranchers and the freighters, met them as a single body. "Your contracts are with a criminal," Jedediah stated. Cole Whitaker standing beside him, his presence a quiet support. The debts he wrote, the foreclosures he forced, they are void. They were built on fraud. It was a standoff. The creditors had the paper. The town had the truth. Major Collins, before returning to his fort, had left a final piece of advice: create a legal entity, a single voice. And so they did. They pooled what little they had. The ranchers put up 5% of their cattle. The freighters offered 10% of their haulage contracts. Cole Whitaker sold his small, wild herd of horses, all but his bay, and put the money in. They called it the Common Water Fund. It was not just money. It was a new covenant. They did not pay Blackwell's fraudulent debts. Instead, they used the fund to buy, at a fair price, the titles to the land that had been seized. The creditors, facing a long, expensive, and likely losing battle in federal court against Major Collins's testimony, took the small settlement. The land around the spring, the land that Blackwell had tried to steal, was now legally co-owned by the people of the valley, Dine and Anglo alike. The legal battle finished, not in the dusty town, but far away. The Telegraph brought the news 3 weeks later. Major Collins had delivered his report, the ledger, and the depositions, including the dying words of Valdez. The Department of the Interior, faced with a treaty violation, a conspiracy, and a decorated major threatening to go to the newspapers, acted swiftly. A memorandum was signed in Washington. The Long Spring, and the valley it fed, was declared a protected sacred site. A perimeter of 5 miles was established. All commercial construction, all railroad activity, was banned permanently. The victory was no longer just a wall of mud and rock. It was now a line on a federal map. While the paper war was won, the human war was healing. Kai Yazzie recovered slowly. The knife wound had been deep, dangerously close to his heart. For weeks, he lay in a medicine lodge, tended by Tala with herbs that smelled of pine and sage, and by the army medic who visited twice, bringing clean bandages and carbolic. Cole sat with him often. They spoke little. They did not need to. They had shared the mud, and that was a language of its own. One evening, weeks later, Kai was sitting up, his arm in a clean sling. The wounds had scarred over. He was thinner, but his eyes were clear. Cole brought him a cup of coffee. Kai looked at the simple, braided cord on Cole's wrist. He nodded. "He who stands in the water. It is a good name." "I am trying to learn what it means," Cole said. "It means you are not easily moved." Kai took the coffee, his good hand steady. He looked out of the tent flap, toward the new green that was emerging in the valley. "I spent my life believing that freedom was a good horse, a clean rifle, and an empty horizon. That to be free meant to be alone." "I knew that feeling," Cole said. "I was wrong," Kai said. He met Cole's gaze, his eyes free of the old suspicion, filled now with a brother's knowledge. Freedom is not about being alone. Freedom is knowing who rides beside you, knowing you can trust the man at your back. He raised his cup, a gesture of toast, to those who ride beside us. Cole raised his own cup, to those who ride beside us. Cole, too, had a reckoning to make. His own freedom was incomplete. He had a ghost that needed burying, a ghost that lived in the snows of the Washita. He sat at a small, rough table in the rebuilt trading post. He had a pen and ink and a stack of paper. He began to write. He wrote for 3 days. He wrote letters to the Army adjutant at Fort Sill, where the Cheyenne and Arapaho survivors had been moved. He did not know their names. He only knew their faces, seared into his memory. He was writing to find the families of those he had seen that day. He sent the letters, and with them, he sent nearly all the money he had gotten from the sale of his horses. He did not call it charity. In the letters, he called it a small restitution, a token of a debt that can never be paid. He wrote of the officer who gave the order. He wrote of his own refusal. He did not ask for forgiveness. He was simply, finally, putting his name to the truth. He signed each letter Cole Whitaker, formerly Lieutenant, United States Cavalry. He sealed the envelopes. He felt a 10-year-old weight lift from his shoulders. He was no longer a man running. He was a man who had finally stood still. The physical proof of the new world was rising from the salvaged timbers of Blackwell's ruined derrick. The community, ranchers and dine, built it together. It was a single long building of stone and fresh pine, set back from the long spring, respecting the sacred line. Tala called it the Waterlight School. On the first day, 20 children came. They were dine, their hair in traditional wraps. They were Mexican, their eyes bright and curious, and they were the pale, freckled children of the ranchers, like Sarah, the girl Blackwell had taken. They sat together on benches that Kai and Jedediah had built. Tala stood before them. She was not a warrior. She was not a victim. She was a teacher. She taught them their letters, writing on a slate with chalk from the high desert. But her real classroom was outside. She took them to the dike, now a permanent greening wall of earth. She showed them the herbs that were pushing through the wet soil. "This is yarrow," she said, her voice clear, holding up the feathery plant. "It stops bleeding. It breaks a fever. It is a gift." She taught them the principles of the canals Cole had described. She showed them how to build small, careful channels to guide the water, to share it, so that the ranches could drink, and the corn could grow, and the spring would never be exhausted. Cole watched from a distance, mending a corral. He watched her, and he knew he was looking at the future. When the valley was green, when the first harvest of corn was brought in from the new, shared fields, the people gathered. It was time. They came to the spring, not in fear, but in gratitude. The Dine elder brought his drum, the same drum that had held the rhythm against the flood. He began to beat it, that same steady, deep heartbeat. The Dine sang their songs of blessing. Pastor Brown, the clergyman from Dry Mesa, read a psalm of thanksgiving. It was not one ceremony, it was two, laid side by side, and they fit perfectly. Major Collins was there. He wore no uniform, no saber. He was in a simple wool suit, his hat in his hand. He had not come as the army. He had come as a friend. Tala passed a cup, a single cup carved from cottonwood. She dipped it into the long spring and passed it to the Dine elder. He drank and passed it to Kai. Kai drank and passed it to Jedediah. Jedediah drank and passed it to his wife. She passed it to the Mexican freighter. It went around, hand to hand, until it came to Major Collins. He drank and passed it to Cole. Cole drank. The water was cold and clean. It tasted like the earth. He passed the cup to Tala. She drank last, and she poured the remaining drops back onto the ground. A gift returned. They stood in a circle, their heads bowed, silent. Later that evening, when the fires were low, Cole found her. He had been thinking. He had been saving. He had a small, plain gold band in his pocket. He was a white man, and this was his way. He found her by the spring. "Tala," he said. He was more nervous now than he had been facing the Gatling gun. "Ta'ili. In my world, when two people choose each other, there is a custom." He fumbled in his pocket and held out the ring. It shone, a small, perfect circle, in the moonlight. She looked at it. Her face was very soft. She reached out and touched the gold. Once, it is a circle. It is beautiful, but it is cold, and it is a brand. It is a mark of ownership. He started to speak, but she stopped him. She took his left hand, the one that wore the simple, braided cord she had given him in the medicine tent. That, she said, touching it, was your name. He who stands in the water, it was for you. She gently, carefully, untied it. Cole felt a moment of panic, of loss. Tala. She silenced him with a smile. She reached into her own pocket. She pulled out a new braid. This one was different. It was 2 strands, one of black wool, one of red, woven tightly, perfectly together. This, she said, her voice a whisper, is ours. This is a double braid, 2 lives, woven, not owned, not locked, but bound together, by choice. She took his wrist and tied the new, double braid in place. It was warm from her hand. I do not want a ring. Cole, she said, I choose this. He looked at the double braid. He closed his hand, the small, cold ring still inside, and forgot it. He ran his thumb over the warm wool. I choose it too, he said. The next day, the final piece was put in place, in the center of Dry Mesa, right over the community well that Pike had guarded and Blackwell had tried to steal. Jedediah and Kai hung a new sign. They had carved it themselves from a single plank of salvaged pine. The letters were burned deep. They were plain, and they were clear. They were a promise, and they were a warning. This water is protected by all. 1 year passed. The land, which had been a study in brown and red, was now, impossibly, green. The drought had broken, but it was the work of hands, not just the sky, that had healed the valley. The new canals, built with dine knowledge and rancher muscle, guided the water from the long spring in clean, sensible lines. The water ran out onto the alkali flats, washing the salt away, leaving rich, dark earth. The high meadows, Cole's old grazing lands, were thick with grass. Down at the spring, a sight that would have been impossible a year ago now happened every day. Cole Whitaker's new herd of horses, smaller but stronger, drank from the east bank. On the west bank, the dine sheep, their wool thick, drank their fill. The animals shared the water, their reflections mingling in the clear, steady flow. Cole and Tala had built their home. It was set back from the spring, on a small rise, respecting the sacred ground. It was 2 buildings, joined by a covered breezeway. On one side, a solid log house, built by Cole, with a stone chimney that he had set himself. It smelled of pine and coffee. On the other side, a traditional medicine lodge, round and facing the east, built by Tala and her cousins. It smelled of sage and juniper. It was a home with 2 hearts, and they beat as one. They lived between the 2, a life woven together like the braid on Cole's wrist. He taught her how to set a hinge. She taught him which plants to eat. He mended her wagon. She mended his shirt. It was a quiet, steady life, built not on grand passions, but on the daily, rhythmic work of survival and respect. He had finally learned to say her name, Tu'ili, and it felt as natural as his own. Kai Yazi was a changed man. The 2 wounds in his shoulder had left him with a deep, aching scar and a weakness in his left arm. He could no longer draw a bow, and his rifle work was slower. But his spirit, which had been a coiled spring of anger, had found its purpose. He was no longer just a warrior. He was a statesman. He moved between the Dine Elders and the Dry Mesa Town Council, a translator, a negotiator, a bridge. He was the man who ensured the water was shared fairly, that the promises made in the mud were kept in the sun. He had found a freedom, not in solitude, but in connection. He had become the man who understood both worlds, and his voice was the most respected in the valley. The town of Dry Mesa was alive. The Common Water Fund had become the foundation for a new economy. They started a cooperative. The Dinah brought their wool, the finest in the territory. The Mexican freighters, who now had a permanent station, brought their cured leather. The ranchers brought their hides. In the old, burned-out general store, rebuilt with new timber, they opened a trading post, a real one. The Waterlight Weavers, a guild of women taught by Tala, produced blankets that were now famous, their patterns telling the story of the flood and the fight. The Leatherworks, run by Jedediah and Kai's cousin, made saddles that were sought after in 2 territories. People had money in their pockets. They had food on their tables. They had hope. And in the Waterlight School, Tala's dream had fully bloomed. It now included an herbal medicine station. When a rancher's child broke his arm, Tala and Jedediah's wife, Martha, set it together. When a dying elder had a cough, he came for her herbal steam, but also for the clean bandages the army medic had taught Martha to use. They were healing each other. The news from the federal court in Fort Sheffield arrived by telegraph. 6 months into the new year, Horace Blackwell, despite a team of expensive lawyers, had been convicted. His conspiracy, his bribery, and the damning evidence of the ledger, combined with Major Collins's furious testimony, had sealed his fate. He was sentenced to 20 years of hard labor in a federal prison. He would never see the high desert again. Sheriff Pike, facing the charge of murder, had tried to lie, but the testimony of his own deputies, eager to save themselves, had buried him. He was found guilty and hanged at the fort, a stark, legal end to a brutal life. There was one last piece of business. In the small cemetery outside Dry Mesa, where the flood victims and the freighters Pike had murdered were buried, a new stone was placed. It was paid for by the Common Water Fund. It was for Valdez, the man who had been a hunter, but had refused to be a butcher. The stone did not carry a cross. It just had his name, and 3 words, carved in Spanish and English, the man who spoke the truth. It was Tala's idea. She believed that even a lost soul could have one true moment. They called it the Festival of the Spring. It was held on the 1-year anniversary of the night they had built the dike. The entire valley gathered. The smell of roasting corn and mutton filled the air. The old dying elder beat his drum, the heartbeat, and the young people danced. The children, the first generation of the new community, gathered at Cole's feet. He was a storyteller now, a role that still surprised him. Sarah, Jedediah's daughter, sat beside a small dying boy, both of them looking up at him. "Tell us again, Mr. Cole," Sarah said. "Tell us about the big wall." Cole smiled, the lines around his eyes crinkling. He looked over the crowd, his gaze finding Tala, who was watching him, her face soft. "The wall was just a wall," Cole said, his voice low and steady, drawing the children in. "The wall was not the story. The story is about listening. For a long time, the grown-ups, we were all deaf. We could not hear the land. We could not hear the rocks or the water or each other. We shouted, and we fought." He leaned forward. "The story is that one night, in a great storm, we finally stopped shouting. We heard the drum, we heard the water, and we learned how to listen. That is how we saved the spring. That is how we saved ourselves." Later, when the moon was high and the fires had burned down to red, glowing hearts, Tala found him. He was standing alone by the spring, watching the water move in the moonlight. The night was quiet, the celebration over. She came up behind him, not making a sound. He did not need to turn. He knew her presence. He felt it, like the hum of the water in the stone. She took his hand, his left hand. She ran her thumb over the double braid, the red and black cord, now worn soft with a year of work and life and sweat. "You are a good storyteller," she whispered. "I had a good story to tell," he said, His voice was rough. She turned him, not by force, but by a simple pull of her hand. She stood on her toes and drew his head down to hers. She kissed him. It was not the chaste, frightened kiss on the mesa. It was not the desperate kiss of relief in the mud. This was a long, slow kiss. It was a kiss of deep knowledge, of possession chosen freely. It held the taste of smoke and water, and the certainty of a life built, not found. She pulled back, just enough to look in his eyes. Her own eyes were dark, luminous pools, reflecting the moonlight. "I have chosen," she whispered, her voice fierce and final. "Forever." Cole held her. He looked up at the sky, his heart full, the old, aching hollowness gone. High above, a lone eagle, which had been a symbol of warning, drifted on the night air. It swooped low over the valley, its shadow passing over the dike, over the school, over the shared herds. Its reflection, a perfect, dark shape, crossed the face of the long spring, a blessing in the clear water. Cole looked down at his wrist, at the braided cord. A drop of water from Tala's hair fell onto it, sparkling in the moonlight, a jewel of red and black. He knew, then, the true meaning of Western freedom. It was not the empty land. It was not the lone rider. It was this, to be bound, by choice, to the land, and to the people, and to the promise you intend to keep. Thank you so much for listening to this story. We would love to know where you are listening from in the world, so please leave a comment below and share your thoughts. Do not forget to subscribe to our channel, Wild West Tales, and like this video. If you enjoyed it, please also hit that hype button to help this story be heard by more people.